Welcome everybody. Today is Friday, March 10th, 2023. It is 8:34 a.m. We are convened as the Provo City School District Board of Education, and we're meeting at 1591 North Jordan Avenue in Provo, Utah. And we welcome everybody today to our study session and our all-day meeting / board retreat. We're going to start with a roll call. I'm Rebecca Nielsen, Board President.
Jennifer Partridge, Vice President.
Melanie Hall, Board Member.
Meg Van Wagenen, Board Member.
Gina Hales, Board Member.
Keith Hertel, Superintendent.
Derek Anderson, Business Administrator.
And then, of course, we welcome everyone else who's here in attendance with us today and anyone who's watching online. I have a message from Lisa Boyce that she'll be arriving in like 5 minutes. She went to the wrong location, so she'll be here in just a minute. And then we are expecting Terry McCabe as well. So we will go ahead and I will go ahead and entertain a motion to convene the study session.
I move we convene study session.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Partridge. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second made by Board Member Hales.
Hall.
Oh my gosh, you guys.
Couple letters off. It's okay. It's okay.
Hall, Hales, by the board member in the white shirt. How about
Perfect.
And we'll go ahead and start with our first item today, which is an Innovating Learning Report and overall Chromebook usage report by Susie Cox, our Director of Innovative Learning. Welcome, Susie.
Thank you very much. Can you hear with the microphone?
Yep.
Beautiful. Kate will get my slides up for me, or someone will. All right, thank you for this opportunity to finally come face to face and meet many of you and present to you about what we're trying to do in innovative learning. So I've been asked by multiple people now, so I will make it happen, to tell you a little bit about my background. I've been in this industry of educational technology for a very long time, and so I'm just going to kind of give you some of the big points here. I do have a doctoral degree in instructional psychology and technology, and I'm an ISTE certified educator, so that's the International Society for Technology and Education. It's a really tough certification to get. I specialize in developmentally appropriate use of technology and digital inclusion. So as we move forward and we talk about some of the issues today, please know that that's where I'm coming from, is this developmentally appropriate use. I do have a specialized training in educational neuroscience, educational psychology, technology, universal design, and computer science. I'm a former associate professor of education at UVU and was the coordinator for their educational technology master's program. So I was there for 16 years prior to coming here. I'm also the co-founder of the UVU Creative Learning Studio, which is a computer science, robotics, and STEM initiative at UVU. I'm a former board member of the Utah Coalition for Educational Technology. That's our local or state branch of the International Society. And an invited member of the USBE Educational Technology Micro-Credentials Committee, so I've just helped draft those for the state. In 2018, I organized the National CS for All Summit, Computer Science for All. And I'm an ISTE and USBE recognized expert in educational technology and computer science education, so I'm called on by them periodically to come in and present. If you're really bored, I'm a TEDx speaker. You're welcome to watch it. Most importantly, I am a Provo district mom. So my kids have gone through the system. My son is currently a student at Provo High, a senior. So we went through the Lakeview-Dixon Provo track and have had a delightful experience. So that informs my experience as well. And then my teaching experiences in middle school in particular, they're my favorites. So I taught middle school in both the US and in Mexico. And then I also taught high school here. So, okay, that's me. Here's what we're trying to accomplish today. So I'm just going to kind of introduce you to the purpose and philosophy of what we're trying to do in my division, emphasize some of the state and national imperatives that have come out fairly recently that are having a big impact on the work that we're doing. We'll highlight some of those major projects that we've been working on and then provide some information about funding, district comparisons, Chromebook usage, et cetera. If I go anywhere you don't want me to go, I guess, let me know. And if you have questions, please don't hesitate. So I want to start today with students who guide our work. We don't start from a place of technology, we start from a place of students. And so I've shared some of my favorite students with you. The majority of these are actual kids that I know. So let's start with Vanessa. Jennifer, would you read that for us?
Do you want me to read it in Spanish or translate it?
In Spanish, if you would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vanessa y su familia llegaron a Provo desde Venezuela la semana pasada. Como refugiados de un pueblo remoto no tuvieron la oportunidad de aprender nada de inglés antes de llegar, pero a Vanessa le encanta la escuela, especialmente la ciencia. Ella quiere seguir aprendiendo aquí en Provo, pero los materiales en inglés presentan una barrera. Mientras continúa aprendiendo inglés, las tecnologías del distrito como lector inmersivo y lectura y escritura la ayudarán a mantenerse al día con su contenido de ciencias.
Thank you. Brief translation, anybody want to approach that?
She came recently from Venezuela. They didn't have time to learn English before they got here. She loves science, wants to keep learning, and the technology and resources we have are helping her to be able to keep up with that as she's in the process of learning English.
Yeah, beautiful. Who wants to read about Chelsea? Oh, I've assigned people. That's right. Melanie, go for it.
Chelsea has dyslexia, CAPD, and ADHD. Her parents did not want her labeled as needing special education services, so she spent a lot of time at school completely lost. As technologies have evolved and with help of caring teachers, she has learned to use audiobooks, text-to-speech, voice typing, and tools like Cami and Canvas to access material and communicate with her understanding. Chelsea now has a master's degree and multiple teaching endorsements and is the district educational technology coordinator.
Thank you. All right, Meg's got my son.
I feel honored. Brian doesn't write well by hand. His handwriting is still about the same as when he was in kindergarten, and it takes significant time and effort for him to get his ideas out on paper. He also really struggles with taking tests, so he's an average student and struggles to engage at school. But give him a computer and he'll write you 3,000 words on the topic or create a computer program to demonstrate a solution, and he will definitely talk your ear off. He uses YouTube videos to learn high-level programming concepts and skills. He just finished programming a utility for his father's work and is currently developing a game designed to help musicians develop hand independence.
Yeah, I like him a lot. Gina.
Marie's single father is doing everything he can to make ends meet, but he can't afford to buy a computer or a cell phone and doesn't have time in the evenings to teach Marie digital literacy skills. When Marie gets to college, she discovers that nearly all of her coursework is online in Canvas, and everything about college, from registering for classes to communicating with advisors, requires a level of technology knowledge she just doesn't have.
This was one of my middle schoolers. Rebecca.
All right. Miguel has every possible financial advantage and uses his cell phone to participate actively in social media. His parents use technology for work and social media, but don't think about the digital literacies and citizenship Miguel needs. Miguel ends up in the same boat as Marie, able to use his phone for entertainment, but unable to engage effectively with digital schoolwork or create anything meaningful with technology. And his frequent, unfiltered engagement with social media leads to some significant misconceptions about the world.
One of my high schoolers. All right, I'll take my last one. This is my daughter. Caitlin happened to get technologically proficient parents with the time and energy to teach her digital literacy and digital citizenship. She happened to get a handful of teachers, including Judy Rose here in the district, who were willing to innovate in their classrooms. She had opportunities to participate in coding and other technology-based summer camps. So for her, navigating the college application process was simple. Using Canvas is easy. Submitting video auditions, she's an opera singer, and applications for international opportunities is commonplace. And she has a healthy relationship with social media. She's currently earning an arts and technology certificate to supplement her degree in vocal performance, so she can develop a side hustle using social media marketing for nonprofit organizations. All right, so this is the question we start from in our work. Do we want to leave access to learning and digital literacy to chance? And that's effectively what's happening if we don't bring some consistency into the work that we're doing and kind of identify what these skills are that we need our students to have. So Keith brought us the original Innovative Learning Initiative several years ago. And so just some background on that, and Keith is welcome to fill in any details he would like to. Drawing from his documentation, his vision was to produce students who can thrive in a technology-rich society with skills of being able to problem solve with high-quality solutions. And to allow us as an entire district to become more collaborative and committed to improvement through a culture change about what we teach and how we teach. Sitting on the outside of this, and actually I was brought in to do some of the training for the original Innovative Learning Initiative, this approach was considered quite groundbreaking. It really was across the state. So it required a teacher commitment in exchange for access to technology. So if you're not super familiar with it, teachers signed up for a 2-year commitment to professional learning, consistent. They had to demonstrate what they were working on, and in return they got a Chromebook cart to be able to use in their classroom to facilitate that innovation. The idea was that this would spread then through modeling. There would be teachers in the building that would see this happening and be like, oh my goodness, you're doing such amazing things, you're getting such impact. And it did. It started to spread. It started to snowball. And then this stupid thing happened, right? The beautiful thing was, because of Chad's foresight, because we were already doing the initiative, we were able to move to one-to-one really fast, because we already had about a third of our teachers that had participated in the initiative, close to half. So that was lovely. We were able to move pretty quickly into one-to-one for the pandemic. But by doing so, we then removed this major incentive to participate in the initiative. There was no longer that if you do this, then a Chromebook cart is in your classroom. We're in a one-to-one environment. And of course, COVID caused some significant digital learning fatigue, both among all audiences, right? Among our teachers, our students, and their families. So that's when I get hired. Thanks. That's great. So I got the opportunity to come in through a conversation as we were talking about where do we need to go from here? How can we take the essence of what was the original initiative and make it what it needs to be now in the district? I had my lovely tenured faculty position, but to have the chance to come into my home district with teachers I had trained and kids that I know and all this loveliness and say, let's do something together. Yeah, it was literally like a can I come moment. It was awesome. So one of the first things I did was an evaluation of the original initiative. So I spent the first several months surveying teachers, going out talking to teachers and principals and parents and families and kids. And these are some of the things that we found out. So in its initial form, man, the ILI had an impact. I'm going to abbreviate it because I don't want to say Innovative Learning Initiative for the rest of the day. Some of the participants wished for a little bit more structure and support, right? Especially after the program had ended. So they went through their 2 years, and then what do we have now as support? So that was one of the big takeaways from our participants. As we looked across the district, and this data again is coming from personal visits, from our digital teaching and learning state survey, a number of things that we implemented. We saw significant variability in teacher use and knowledge of technologies. We expect variability, that's fine, because we don't want everybody doing the exact same thing and using it all the time, but significant variability. And that variability between school sites was especially shocking. So as we look at what's happening at one location versus another. There was definitely some inconsistency and a lack of clarity and expectations for technology use. This is the biggest thing I heard from teachers is like, we're just not sure what we're supposed to be doing. And in some locations, not all, but in some, there was a sense of a lack of safety and taking risks. So they were a little bit worried of, if I try this and it's not successful, what's going to happen to me? As we looked at how teachers were using technology, in many cases, the approach was more didactic and tool focused. So I'm using it as a teacher to teach you or to drill your performance. And it was more focused on a tool than on what we were trying to accomplish with that tool. And then as we looked deeper at STEM opportunities in general, so talking about coding and engineering and robotics and things like that, definitely significant variability there as well. So our big takeaway from that evaluation is this. While it helped prepare many teachers for the pandemic and set the stage for this rapid move, those in-between years have been really challenging and have disrupted what was trying to occur. So clearly we need some vision, consistency, and training. All right, so one of the other first things that I did was look at our district mission. What is it that we are trying to accomplish as a district? And I was so happy to see that last phrase. So we're really trying to encourage all students to engage, think, and learn in order to contribute, create, and innovate for a lifetime. And then as I start my position, people say, so what does innovation mean? What is that word? This is my favorite definition. So it comes from George Couros. He's a former teacher and principal. He's a very prominent speaker in educational technology at this point. I'm just going to leave you a minute to read that, and then I'll read the center section. Okay, so change for the sake of change is never good enough. That's not what we're talking about with innovation. To be innovative, we have to start by not only asking what problem are we trying to solve, but also who will this help? So what problems are we trying to solve and who are we trying to help? Our conclusions from what we've seen. Not all of our students, yes, some, but not all of our students are leaving our district with essential digital literacy skills. Many of our students are facing barriers to learning, engagement, and demonstration of understanding in our classrooms. Students are not having equitable opportunities to contribute, create, and innovate, as it says in our mission. And teachers are unsure of how to effectively design and manage these personalized competency-based learning environments. I'm painting a bit of a dire picture. Remember, we're talking about significant variability. In some locations and in some classrooms, wonderful, amazing things are happening. It's not consistent across the district. So the state and the nation are wrestling with these exact same problems. Okay, and so I'm going to walk you through. I apologize for being a little hammerish at this point, but just to make sure that you understand some of the state imperatives that I'm trying to work under. So hopefully you're familiar with Portrait of a Graduate. Yes, and if you want, I've got materials here I'm happy to pass out, or you can access them. I've provided links in the presentation. Okay. I talked with Jennifer Thronson, who's our state director of teaching and learning, for a good half hour the other day about this. Where are we really going with these things? And she said very clearly the Portrait of a Graduate is our state North Star. They will soon be creating an interactive map where you can go in and see which districts have one, which ones are working on one, and which ones have not even started working on one. So they're really serious about this idea of the Portrait of a Graduate. And as we look at that, there are 13 areas of competence within the Portrait of a Graduate, and 2 of them are directly related to the work we're trying to do in our office. At the state level, personalized competency-based learning, she says, is the vehicle we're using to get to that Portrait of a Graduate. This is how we get kids there. Okay? So this is something we're starting to explore at the district. I'm going to put a whole bunch of quotes from it up here. Hold on. There. Okay. So as we look at that one, the gist of it for our kids is that we're trying to cultivate personalized learning environments that are built on student assets. So as I talked earlier about some of our students encountering barriers to their learning, what we're trying to say is, what are the kids amazing at? What are they good at? What are their strengths? Can we leverage that for their learning instead of always focusing on their deficits, right? And I've put in some quotes from that kind of align to some of the work we're trying to do. How can we help kids monitor their own progress? How can we give them a little bit more autonomy in the classroom, et cetera? And then the other side of PCBL is for our teachers. How can we provide more personalized professional learning? Karen has done an amazing job of bringing this into our district. We are here to help her. And they've specifically outlined in that framework 2 things: providing professional learning on performance-based assessment so we can get better at that, and then universal design for learning, which is one of my personal passions. So I was very happy to see that in multiple places. We have our new Utah Effective Teaching Standards as well. Those have 5 standards, each of which have about 4 elements to them. 7 of the elements in that relate directly, wow, I can talk, relate directly, there it is, to what we're trying to do. We've got one all to ourselves called Innovation in Technology, and it says, like, teachers will know all the technologies and when to use them. That's what the element says. You're like, oh, okay. All right. Again, I've got links to all of this stuff, so. One that many of us maybe don't know as well is that in 2019 we had a K-12 computer science master plan that was passed by the state, accepted by USBE. We now have K-12 computer science standards. These are not computer science class standards. They are K-12 all students standards, okay? In that plan, oops, every school is supposed to be teaching, and that's K-12. Every school is supposed to be teaching computer science consistently by last year. So that has not happened statewide. Obviously, this legislation and this funding hit at exactly the wrong moment, but that was the intention. And even perhaps more disturbing, demographic composition of those secondary computer science classes is supposed to match the demographics of the school. So our secondary classes are not too bad. We're at about, well, I can provide you the data. I'm happy to do so. We have some work to do, especially among our female population. Okay. I put some quotes on here if you want them from all the governors. Okay. And then this just came out at the national level. So we just got a Dear Colleague letter from the Department of Education, from the Office of Educational Technology. They're saying basically, after this pandemic experience that we've all kind of stumbled through, in order to recover, we're going to have to take this moment and be decisive about what we're doing. It's going to require innovative work of piloting, refining, and I think most importantly here, scaling technologies that make a meaningful impact on the holistic learning and development of students. They also outlined 4 funding priorities, and they talk in this letter about some ways to get funding for this. We've done pretty well as far as state grants and things go, as well as utilizing our national grant monies intentionally and intelligently. So bringing in that personalized professional learning for our teachers, increasing access to digital content and resources for our students, facilitating collaboration and communication among our educators, and making sure that we do have those devices available. Those are the funding priorities from the national level. All right, so we've got all this data, we've got all this information. What are we trying to do? So looking at your board mission, crafted a mission for our division to develop a culture of meaningful innovation to ensure that all students in Provo City School District are future ready. Big list of functions here. Good morning. First and foremost, we're trying to model what these innovative pedagogies look like. So we're trying to get into classrooms, talk with teachers, and show them what these look like. Universal design, PCBL, flexible learning, which we'll talk about in a minute, our computer science and other STEM fields and practices. We're providing that professional learning and support. We're supporting the strategic use, let me emphasize that word, strategic use of a learning management system, and we chose Canvas to fulfill that role, and other district-supported core technologies. So one of the first things, again, that I did was say, let's get some consistency in what's being used and what's available. So we narrowed down the list of 1,800 apps that were approved for use in the district to 14 key resources that we're going to use and train on. Okay. Promoting the ethical and positive use of technology. I've got one of my staff members right now working on a digital citizenship curriculum review to help us with that. Supporting students and families. This is a project we're embarking on now to provide training and support for our families and students so they know how to use these products as well. Communicating innovation, making sure we're evidence informed as we're trying to do all of this. So I'm involved in a lot of state and national work. Gathering input, and then establishing consistent and transparent processes for all of this. So that's what we're trying to do. It kind of boils down to these 2 ideas then as we move forward, and you can see the alignment with what Keith was originally envisioning here, right? We need to, at the same time, raise the baseline of what we're doing across the district to make sure all of our kids have those essential skills, while also pushing the boundaries. What's coming next? Because technology does move fast enough that if all we're doing is raising the baseline, we're going to fall behind again, right? So we've got this nice balance that's happening between district-wide professional learning that we're trying to do, consistency, and also some of our innovative programs that we're bringing together smaller groups to push that. So to take a minute and talk about what we want in classrooms and what we don't want in classrooms. Want to make this really clear because I am hearing a lot of people that have maybe misperceived what we've said in the past, or they are implementing things that they did during COVID and now they're keeping that in the classroom, and whether that's a good thing or not. So here we go. So we want developmentally appropriate technology use. Is it appropriate for a kindergartner to do everything on a computer? No. In fact, most things should not be done on a computer for a kindergartner, a first grader, a second grader. There are reasons to use it, but for the most part, I want face-to-face and hands-on. We want to reduce those barriers to learning. When I look at kids like Vanessa, right, I want her to be able to learn science now, not 3 months from now when she's mastered English. I want Brighton to be able to tell me what he knows without it taking him an hour to try and write it by hand. Judy knows my son's handwriting. It's atrocious. Okay, we're reducing those barriers to learning. This is my favorite. Flexible classrooms that allow the teacher to work with smaller groups and individuals. And I'll show you an example of that in a moment. Building up our student self-direction as I go out and talk to teachers is the big one. Our kids just wait to be spoon-fed. They're not engaged. We need to build up that muscle again of being self-directed, developing those 6 C's, critical thinking, creativity, etc. Teacher clarity and data-informed instruction, right from our district improvement plan, right from our goals. We have to make sure that all the things we're doing with technology are coming from a place of teacher clarity. And then making sure that our STEM instruction and activities are inclusive and they're being used to increase student engagement and opportunity. What we don't want, digital worksheets. I hate them. I hate them. Okay.
Actually, Susie, there's a professional development guy that we've experienced in the last several years. He calls worksheets shut-up sheets.
Shut-up sheets, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I was with Doug Fisher last week. Shut-up sheets he was talking about as well. We don't want digital everything. This is a misconception that I've been hearing from a few, especially middle school teachers. Well, you told us that we have to use Canvas. Well, yeah, to be consistent and to organize materials. You should not be on the computer all day during class. There are times when that might happen. We're in the middle of a research project, for example. But that should not be what we see the majority of the time in our classrooms. And conversely, digital nothing. We also don't want that, because then we're missing out on those skills and we're back to leaving it to chance. What do they get at home? We don't want student-to-screen relationships that are stronger than student-to-parent, student-to-teacher, student-to-student relationships. Those need to be the focal point of what we're doing. And we don't want to use technology just to use it. So let me give you some, I wanted to define flexible learning first so that you kind of have what our definition is. We crafted this definition here at the district. What we're looking for are students and teachers' ability to move flexibly between online and offline activities to best meet students' needs. As a former dance teacher, I'm going to dance it, right? Like it's an advance and retreat kind of thing. I move forward when I'm supposed to move forward when it makes the most sense. I'm going to move back off the technology when I need to. We're using it all to facilitate our high impact practices coming from our research base that we use as a district. Technology should be used in service of these things. So again, you'll have access to these slides. So let me show you some great examples. This is the amazing LaDale Tobler from Amelia Earhart Elementary School. This is her Canvas page. Notice the date. This is yesterday. So she does this every day. Just above this is a video introduction for the week. Okay? Third grade teacher, she's not using this extensively. What she's doing with her Canvas is outlining her learning targets so that the kids know what they're working on today, and provides links to any resources they're going to need access to throughout the day. That's all. Organization and clarity. This is Mary Wade. Mary Wade is being recognized at USET next week as Provo's Innovative Educator of the Year. So kudos to her, she's at Provost. At first glance, this looks really weird, but this is what we're talking about with flexible learning. Her fifth graders started math block, and they said, I'm not doing very well with this math concept. I'm going to go to workshop with Mrs. Wade. Or, I think I'm feeling pretty comfortable with this math concept. I'm going to do the self-guided piece. She has, by December of 5th grade, taught her kids to self-evaluate. She is now working with half of the kids. These kids may look like they're working independently, but they're not. They're going through self-guided materials, but they're free to talk to each other, work together, all of that kind of stuff. I was there for well over an hour and didn't see a single behavior problem. I don't know what's in the water that she's giving them, but it was amazing. So she worked with this group in the workshop situation for 15, 20 minutes going through the content, and then did an exit ticket. And the kids who had mastered that exit ticket were able to move off and start working on some of the self-directed items. She then had cut her group down to a quarter of her class that she was able to provide direct support for because they were still struggling. That's what we're talking about. This is just fun. No, just kidding. Decoding and storytelling, using robotics, bringing those STEM concepts in to start thinking about how we can approach subjects in a way that remove barriers that help kids think differently about what they're trying to do. This is a project at Centennial Middle School. We went into their STEM class and worked with them on an empathy project, thinking about a student in our school that has cerebral palsy. What are some supports that they might need? What are some ways that we could support them in our school? And they developed robotic models to demonstrate their solution. And then this is Jason.
Relay information. The coolest thing about allowing students to pick topics, to pick technology, to present information, is that really it creates this very meaningful and equitable access where kids feel like they can be successful, they feel like they can be heard. One of my favorite projects every year is to give kids a choice on a research topic, and then I get to learn all these things because I'm reading all their papers. But now, not only do I get to learn all these diverse topics, but I get to see all these really cool ways that these kids can communicate with us, with each other, and the world. And it's gotten to a point now where some of these kids are like so proud of what they're doing that they want to publish these websites. Some of them are talking about buying domain names and like really putting this out there to the world because they love it so much. And
would you stop that for me?
I feel like a sign of...
Doesn't want to. Oh, there it goes. Okay. That was Jason Manzanares at Provo High School, one of our amazing English teachers. He had an experience during the pandemic when he realized he had been for years having kids write paper after paper after paper after paper, and those papers weren't getting all that much better. But during the pandemic, he was like, oh, I can't do that. I'm going to scale it way back and just have them for the whole rest of the year focus on one. And they went through the drafting process and the revision process and the peer feedback process, and their papers at the end were far better than anything he'd received for years prior. Like, he's really understood what the vision of this is. I put these slides in case you are interested. I ran the report this morning on what our most frequently used technologies are across the district. I can get a little bit of insight in what we're trying to do, where we might need to step in a little bit. So for the most part, we've got teachers, especially in secondary, who are utilizing Canvas. They're using their Google tools. Clever is a sign-on system that we use in our elementary schools so that it makes it easier for our kids to sign on. We roster, et cetera. Not my favorite. Cool math games. We'll work on that one. They're not math. Those are babysitters. So that's one we need to work on. It's always in the top 10, right? So we're aware that this is a problem. But you can see, as we kind of move through this, we've got a mix of things for review and entertainment and things that we hope are for better purposes. So you can kind of see where we fall. Google Classroom. I'll work on it. I'll work on it. We moved to Canvas for consistency for families, consistency for kids. So we're still working on that particular aspect. So a lot in a short amount of time, both this presentation and what we've been trying to do. Just so you have the timeline, I was hired and started in January of last year. I worked with Chelsea. We tried to kill her, basically, because she was still teaching full-time. She was our Canvas administrator and helped us get these style guides out. And we did a series of summer workshops, and then the rest of my team officially started in August. So I've passed out an infographic. You're welcome to kind of consume at your leisure, ask me questions about. regarding what we've accomplished. You're also welcome to take a look at my strategic plans from both right when I started in January as well as the newer one that we did this year. They're ambitious. And then I also did an accountability report back in August, so you can take a look at kind of where we came. Want to let you know as we move forward, we are the first district in the state to work on a thorough analysis of student and teacher digital competencies. I've already got some other districts who are like, ooh, can we do this with you? Because they're really excited about it. We've identified 6 domains that kind of are aligned to Portrait of a Graduate. They're emerging from the standards. So we're really trying to say, according to the standards, what are our kids supposed to be able to do in language arts and math and science, et cetera, that aligns to technology? How does that fit with Portrait of a Graduate, PCBL, et cetera? Where we're pushing the boundaries is with our PCSD Innovators program. So this is a cohort of about 20 teachers who've done a 2-year commitment, similar to Keith's original vision. These folks will earn their ed tech endorsement from the state. We're a recognized pathway for that. And then our STEM inclusion initiative that we've started, we're piloting this year. We've got 3 schools working with us. We do coding, robotics, and engineering with them. They've committed to at least an hour on Fridays to devote to STEAM activities. We've given them, or will by next Tuesday, 15 hours of professional learning across the year as a group to explore this. We are moving, I'm hinting at something that I'll be bringing to you at some point, toward a district STEM designation. If you're going to say in Provo District that you're a STEM school, that needs to mean something. So we're moving towards that, and then this summer we'll also be doing some pacing guides and curriculum development around computer science and robotics. So I'm finishing up with a little overview of where our budgets come from. You all have given us some local funds to fund my staff, as well as Chromebooks. So about 1/4 of my local funds go right straight to Chad so that he can buy us more Chromebooks to take care of that. And then those funds also pay for our district STEM fair, keyboarding, our digital citizenship review, and significant teacher training initiatives. The remainder of my funding comes from grant programs. And you can see on the pie chart that we are in the process of pursuing 2 additional grants for a total of $145,000 that we're looking for. To make sure that we have this support for our teachers. So the state digital teaching and learning grant is basically required. Every district has one of these grants. This is what funds a lot of our work. So half of that is going to Chromebooks to maintain that 1-to-1 ratio. That's what's paying for the licenses for several of our district supported platforms. So that's how we're funding those. And again, teacher training. And then we've got money from the state for our K-12 computer science work, and that's what's funding the STEM inclusion initiative. Okay, as well as right now I'm paying for my CS and STEM specialist and then half of the salary for the robotics teacher at Provo High. Finishing off with a staff comparison. So looking at our comparison districts as well as NEBO next door, just so we can kind of see what might we aspire to. Their department for innovative learning, not called the same, but has been around for about 15 years. They're one of the older programs in the state. So it's a nice one to model and kind of think what might we become someday. Our list looks long there because we have one of everything. And I put our part-time secretary on there. So there you go. You can see that we're almost directly parallel to Iron. We're almost directly parallel to Ogden. Their Canvas administrator, which I have not listed in his department, is in the tech department. So that's another interesting issue. Like some of these people have overlapping roles in tech. We've decided to separate some of those things in our district. And in part because now Chelsea handles those 14 rostered, supported technologies. We have one person who's dedicated to that work. And you can see she alone has handled 654 help desk tickets since July. So, there you go. Okay, hit me. What do you got?
Okay, are there any questions from the board?
I don't have a question, but I just want to say thank you. I think what you're doing is amazing. We have to be doing it. When I first moved here to Provo, I moved here from Silicon Valley, and I remember going in and offering to run a Friday STEM thing, and they were like, we're not a STEM school.
Yeah.
And I thought, what does that mean? That's like saying we're not a reading school or a math. Like, there was no such designation in parts of the country where
Yeah.
I've lived before. And so
seeing this coming in and seeing the innovation happening, I'm a big fan. So thank you for your hard
Thank
work.
you very much. Appreciate that.
I echo the thanks. This was very insightful to see all the work that
Good.
you've been doing and your background and everything. I am hearing from parents, especially when I go to the middle school PTA meetings and things like that, just a frustration. I'm looking at your list here of what we want and what we don't want, and I'm getting a sense that people are feeling a lot of what we don't want. That there's some teachers that are doing digital everything and not interacting with their students, and that lack of relationship with some of that maybe we're not where you want to be yet. So how do you plan to get there? How do we help our teachers and our parents and our students? And with our students taking Chromebooks home, that's a lot of the issues too, that we all don't know how to help support them, that they're not on it all the time, and all those social skills that they're missing out on when they're on their Chromebooks a lot. So
absolutely.
What are your thoughts on all of that?
Good. So first step is for me to be able to work directly with principals to have that impact. So I actually had a conversation with Brooke the other day from Centennial about this very issue. She's like, Susie, I've got teachers who think you said that they're supposed to use technology all the time. And I was like, please let me come to your staff meeting and let's have a conversation, this exact conversation. This is what it looks like. This is what we're trying to do. That's not what we want. And now let me send my specialists in to support you in co-creating lessons, in modeling what it looks like, in co-teaching, so that we can start to build that back from a teacher perspective. You're right that we need some interventions for families. Hopefully our digital citizen curriculum that we're working on reviewing right now will be a support to that as we start to bring that more into our classrooms. But I think we need to do more with parent education. So that's something that I think we should definitely have a discussion about what that could look like. Chad and I have talked about the idea of when do Chromebooks go home? Do they go home? All of those kinds of things. I think that's a rich conversation we need to have. There are equity issues involved, as there always are. And there certainly could be opt-ins and opt-outs and those kinds of things, but it gets very messy to kind of manage all of that. It also changes expectations. If I'm saying Chromebooks are not allowed to go home, then I cannot require homework that would require the internet, period. And what we know from the research around homework is actually homework can be damaging if kids aren't getting feedback on their work. So reading, beautiful, go home, read, we love you. Go home and practice math, we know can be actually detrimental because they go home, they practice it incorrectly. They learn it to a level of automaticity. They come back to school, and now we have to try and fix that. So if we're going to send home math homework, I'd rather it be online because they can get immediate feedback. There are these interesting plays that we have to manipulate. Or I would rather a flipped classroom situation where it's watch this tutorial, go through it with me, and then we'll do the practice problems at school.
Susie, I would also add that early on in the Innovative Learning Initiative, when I was visiting classrooms, I would see some teachers that were not actually using their Chromebooks, so I put a lot of pressure on them to use them more. So this is kind of a cultural pendulum. And the challenge is to try to find that central place where the right balance has been achieved. Because we're not trying to overuse them, but we are also, we spent a lot of money on these things, and it is the way of the future. So it is difficult to walk into a classroom and consistently see them not being used. So it's just one of those things where it's a growing pain, I guess is what I'm saying.
And Chad and I can provide you the data with the extent to which these Chromebooks are being used. And we can kind of see, as you would anticipate, classrooms ranging from 0 use to far, far too much use. So, and just as a final note, personally, I'm not an advocate for homework. I'd rather kids go home and play the drums. Come to my house. He plays them loud. Lisa.
Well, I was just going to say part of it too, I think, is finding the right tools because to your point about math practice, one of the biggest frustrations I've heard from parents are when their kids have to do their math practice at home, because if you type that in with the wrong spacing or the wrong whatever, they're getting negative feedback on correct math, and so then they end up stuck, and you know, they've got all these kind of
scratch paper
practice test scores that don't actually reflect what they're learning, and the teacher. So I actually think our tools have a ways to go, and so they can't actually replace some of that, because I would say I've seen negative impact on our math work at home when they use the computer versus when they're writing it out on a piece of paper.
Absolutely.
And you can see that. So that little spacing issue, or is it a this letter or that, like, a lot of times then the kid goes in the day of a test with the teacher. I heard this week from 3 different parents about this. Like, they went in that morning and the teacher was like, oh, well, actually that's correct. And their kid had like been beating their head on the wall. Because the computer, the way they'd entered it, kept marking them wrong on practice tests when actually they'd been doing it correctly the whole time.
Yeah.
So that's the tricky thing about finding the right tools and communicating with parents as well as teachers and students around some of the limitations of those tools.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. And Jennifer, thanks for bringing up writing it out by hand, right? That's some of the literature or the research we do have is if I'm going to take notes, I'm still going to do it by hand. If I'm going to work out a math problem, I'm still going to do that by hand. Those pieces of kind of emulating our thinking in the world still do need to happen on paper, and then we can move to digital as necessary. Yeah, I'd rather see a student explain their mathematical reasoning through a video response than to make sure their format is perfectly correct. Judy may kill me for that answer later, because she's a math expert, and I am not. So, other questions or concerns? Gina.
First of all, I want to commend Keith for putting it together. The ILI one was that? What?
15?
Probably 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commend Keith for doing that. I think that was very, I was going to say foresightful, but I don't think that's a word.
We'll make it one.
Thank you for doing that. I think this is an important thing for our kids to be doing. This is the future. They need to be able to do these things. So I appreciate your work on this. I also really appreciate that it's data-driven. I love that it's data-driven and that you're looking at the data and you're using data to make your decisions. Thank you for that. Are you also, I've seen posts, I follow Innovative Learning on some social media. Are you guys in charge or sponsoring the film?
Yes.
And so I didn't have a chance to look much at that, but I think that's awesome as well.
Thank you.
We
Yeah,
can
we've
talk
got a
about it
film
later.
festival component that we've added to our art festival that we've been doing for a couple of years to start to bring up some storytellers. We've realized this year we don't have a lot of filmmakers in the district. So that's something now for us to work on in coming years, is to ensure that our teachers and our clubs are familiar with how to build filmmakers as well.
My 9-year-old, she won't submit anything. They didn't get it done. But she started working on it with a friend who's 2 years older, and I thought it was fantastic.
Nice.
Like, even though they didn't turn it in, I thought it was a good.
I know somebody who could extend the deadline.
I don't know if that would help, to be perfectly honest. But I don't even know what it was, because it wasn't at my house that they were doing it. But I think these are all really great things for our kids to be thinking about. Filmmaking is something that I think, whether or not they do it as a profession, is something they could utilize in a lot of different areas. And
Absolutely.
so I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Melanie.
You mentioned that about 20 teachers are getting certified.
Mm-hmm.
How do we increase that? Because 20 is not a big number from our district.
Absolutely. So that's something that Keith and I have wrestled with a little bit too, is how do we start to incentivize some of these things? There's a bit of a fatigue among our teachers at the moment. I think as they see, like Keith had originally envisioned, as they see some of the things that their colleagues are starting to implement in their classes, as we start to celebrate those more broadly across the district, to say these are the kinds of things we want to see our teachers doing across the district, then that will catch a little bit. So I think we need to work on messaging, and we need to work on incentivizing, and we need to work on expressing that this is what we want our teachers doing. I don't think that message has been as clear to the broad audience of the schools. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to that, helping our teachers, right, not feel like this is one more thing.
Exactly.
Right, and I think that's what you're speaking to, right? So that
Yeah.
keep the conversation of how we support them.
Absolutely.
in
And
this
that's the
engagement.
reason we're going so deep on these digital competencies. People think I'm bananas. I lock myself in a room and I'm like spreadsheets everywhere. But if I can show, here's what it says in the standards our kids are supposed to be able to do. Here's what PCBL says they're supposed to do. Here are the Wicker strategies that we're trying to implement at the secondary level. And teachers are like, I've got 8 different things. No, let's find the through line. Let's figure out how these things come together so that we're presenting a more unified approach to it. So that's what I'm trying to build into these competencies, is like, these are the competencies. Here's where you see Wicker standard or Wicker strategies. Here's where that aligns to PCBL. It's built in. So it's going to take me a little bit. Kindergarten's kind of done. Okay. All right, I know my time is up, so I'm going to do a last little pitch. I do have my secondary innovative learning specialist retiring this year. If I cannot replace him, that is a massive loss. I've got no support for secondary. So just as you're thinking through budgets and those kinds of things, I'd be happy to have conversations about where I can give a little bit, but to just not replace my secondary support, especially when we've started to get some momentum, would be really challenging for us. So I know everybody's gonna say that, but I'm saying it. Okay.
I want to thank Susie. She's taken this and really charged forward with it, so good job. It's in good hands for the future. Thank you, Susie.
Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much, Susie. We really appreciate your presentation. All right, we are going to go ahead and move on now to a report from Karen Brock on instructional coaches. There you are.
I'm here to cover a lot of stuff. Bonnie, have you got my co-op?
No problem.
There's still one from over here. Sorry, guys. Thanks.
I set it over there, and I turned it off, so you can have either the hanging mic or the hand mic.
Then how do I turn it on?
Hold the power button, it's in the middle of the bottom.
Thank you. All right, so I just wanted to quickly, there are many of you, maybe not many, a couple of you I have not met. So I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I'm Karen Brock. I am the Director of Professional Development. For some reason, I'm reading my own slide. And my work across my career and in my doctoral work was school improvement and the change process. I have done that work in about 150 schools. I have calculated over my career, I've visited about 4,000 classrooms. I have taught the university level, K-12. I'm certified both special ed and regular ed. I also have an administrative degree. I've worked at the state office in Washington and in Utah, and I've done quite a bit of consulting. So that's just kind of my very, very quick background. So we're going to talk a little bit about coaching today, because teachers are the most important factor. There's much research across education and across decades. Teachers are the most important driver of student growth and learning. So our teachers need to be growing, and our teachers need to, when we've seen this recently in some very fun ways, but when they're finding their kids aren't growing, when students aren't growing in their classrooms, what they're learning is they need to match their skills to where the students are standing right now. And once that match is made, teaching is very, very fun. It's really frustrating when you've got students in your classroom and you know they can't read and you don't know how to get them moving. But we've had some real boosts of that with our letters and our 95% implementation this year. And teachers have come regularly and said, I didn't know how to move kids until we've just had these programs. And it's changed their confidence in themselves as teachers. And so that's been a really fun piece. So these are lofty outcomes, but first I want to establish a working definition of instructional coaching, what we know through research, and then review the current instructional coaching data for PCSD. I keep a lot of data on what we're doing in coaching, what our topics are, who we're working with, etc. I feel a real responsibility to justify the FTE. We're taking people out of the classroom and putting them into coaching, and it's making a tremendous impact. But I collect all sorts of data in order to show that we're using every hour. And then this, I missed my last one, but I want to discuss, and I think that's lofty in 20 minutes to discuss anything, but I'm going to throw a lot of things at you, and then hopefully we'll have a minute for questions as well. So this is a chart that I keep showing it. Education hasn't changed. In 1982, Johnson came out with this research. Joyce and Showers replicated it in 2002 and 2004, and then many people have replicated it since. But basically what it's saying is when we just stop at theory, when you go to a conference, you learn something new, very exciting, you come back and think, okay, I'm going to do this. Oh, thank you, Bonnie. That's okay.
Hit back and then quit instead of continue. Now quit. The white.
Okay, all right. Takes a team. So when you leave, you have about 10% of what you learned in there stays with you. In terms of what you can do with that data, with that information that you just got at a great conference, about 5% of that you can actually do something with. This is use in the classroom. They looked at a month later what's in the classroom. It just doesn't go from learning about something, being motivated, trying it a little bit. It doesn't really change practice. Adding demonstration really ups your knowledge. If you get to see it in action in some way, even if it's a video clip, someone showing you, it increases your knowledge, increases your skill, still doesn't get to the classroom in any meaningful way. When we add practice and feedback in the training, so you're in the session, you get to leave with having developed some lesson plans, you do some role modeling, some different things to take that skill and mess with it in that setting where you can have some feedback, really improves knowledge, really improves skill, and it trickles to the classroom. And it's just a trickle. Now, in education, a really good training has all three components. We're very hesitant across our field to move it into, and now when you're back in your classroom, we're going to help. We're going to take this new skill set and we're going to support you. That little bit is, sometimes it's 15 minutes of somebody coming in with you, half an hour of somebody coming in with you. So depending on the skill, sometimes it doesn't take much, but it does take that. It can be the peer next door that's working on the same skill you are. It can be an instructional coach across the district. That part, who it is less important than that it is. When we get there, we have professional development in America is an $8 billion with a B, billion-dollar industry. We skip this part. We get this from our $8 billion. So if we add this part, it changes the whole dynamic. Am I just clicking this and you're really doing it?
I just plugged the thing in so you can do it.
Okay. I feel like Bonnie's really helping me here, but it's not happening. So back to you, Bonnie. Okay. This is professional development across our district. This is when teachers get to choose. Now we have our professional development days, and you probably have heard some complaints about professional development days. The complaints are typically from the beginning of the day, we have a meeting. Usually they're going into grade level groups, they're talking about, or department groups, they're talking about important aspects, and sometimes there's professional development in that. A lot of times it's a meeting, and so people complain about meetings sometimes. But the part that we don't get complaints about is there is a section of every professional development day where they get to choose what they want to go and do. About 40% of them, no, probably more like 60% of them, have chosen to do a year-long piece that has a coaching component, it has assignments all the way through. Others have just decided every time I'm going to choose something different. Regardless, this is what we come up with. Strongly agree. The content of the session, red is the content of the session was relevant to my job. So if I add strongly agree and agree, we've got 94%. I gained ideas for implementation. When I add strongly agree and agree, we have 88%. The presenter was well prepared, again, 92%. The presenter provided, this is the green one, the presenter provided opportunities to engage in the topic during the session, 94%. So that's staggeringly high for, I really enjoyed what happened at professional development experience. When they go back to their school, it's also pretty high. When they're back in their school, they have time to work on a topic that they're working, most of our schools are working pretty consistently across the year. So the first one is add valuable information I can utilize in my job. The bottom left was focused on relevant instructional strategies that will support my learning. And then up at the top is provide an opportunity to collaborate. Really important, and that changes the dynamic at the school. So those professional development days are golden and really, really useful to our teachers. So if you think back to the Joyce and Showers chart, the fourth component, we do lots of good professional development. The fourth component is coaching. We've got to have the coaching piece in there if we're going to make meaningful change. Any change that happens, when we're talking school improvement is change in instructional practice, the end. It's change in instructional practice. So if we invest in change in instructional practice that matches where our students are and what they need, we get school improvement. It's a fairly simple formula. Last year, we mentored 117 teachers. That's pretty normal. Those are teachers in their first and second years, pretty much in their first. We have about an average of 120 every year of new teachers. And so the first line of responsibility for coaching is to mentor those new teachers. They have a new teacher course they go through. I have learned, and research backs this up, coaching is not meaningful and not useful unless it's tied to professional development. So first-year teachers have a professional development course they go through with the coaches, and they are implementing and working on. They have two coaching cycles that really deeply implements what they're working on. And so with the mentoring, we had across our district with our coaches 6,000 hours of mentoring. Every teacher gets about 40 hours across the year of coaching. Interestingly, the non-licensed teachers were taking about 85 hours a year. So we've got to do something a little different with that, and we've got some things we're doing that I won't talk about today. But last year we had a really great opportunity to go in and coach in every K-3 classroom. So the first week, the coaches went in and they modeled 5 days the 95% core program. So, because each day is slightly different. So the coach modeled it, the teacher watched and had an observation protocol that they utilized. The second week, the coach said, how can I help you? Where can I co-teach with you? And so each teacher got 2 weeks, 1 week of just watching, the second week of doing together. The third week, we took principals around and showed them how to observe that program because it's different. And we had I've never in my whole career seen this, but we have about 90 to 95% of our K-3 teachers utilizing a phonics and phonemic awareness program with Fidelity and making huge differences. I think you heard probably a little bit about it when Provo Peaks came in and presented to you. They had really exciting, fun things. Mark will send me, this is what this teacher just showed, because the other teachers will come down and say, this child got 70% on this assessment this week. Would never in my wildest dreams. They've only been in America for 4 months. So it's been really fun to watch teachers have the confidence that I can move kids in reading where they have said in the past, I just didn't have any more tools. And that coaching piece has made a remarkable difference. This is the ratio Provo to our neighboring districts, or our districts that are similar. So Ogden has 23 coaches. We have 6.9. Ogden has 23, Iron 13, Box Elder 22, Alpine 140, Nebo 42. Yeah, I need to add up Nebo again. I might have added that up wrong, but 42. It's at least 42. I heard a rumor the other day that Alpine was getting rid of coaching. Not true. I talked to the assistant superintendent. I talked to the director of coaching. Not true. In fact, it's not even in conversation, not even on the table. Every group that I talk to, looking for ways to increase, looking for ways to get more coaching in. When coaching is tied to professional development, it works. When coaching is not tied to professional development, it's nice to have it, it's not worth the FTE. So it has to be tied to professional development. Okay, so these are the top 5 things that make a huge difference that will flip a school around. If you can go to the next one. Oops, there we go. Of those, 3 of them are impacted directly by coaching. I just wanted to kind of give you just kind of that food for thought there. Actually, the number 3 should have been, it's moved, number 2 is the one that should be circled. So it's kind of moved the alignment. Okay, go to the next one. Okay, so we have about 1 to 100 in terms of teacher to coach ratio, which across the other districts, and that's on your paper, but across the other districts, the ratio is from about 24 to 37. So we're not consistent with our other districts by a long shot. Last year we had 11,000 hours of coaching total across the year. Now, this is something that the research is really strong on. If coaches are spread out and doing other things, helping here, helping there, covering, substituting, helping with testing, helping with different things, it dilutes it. The national average is coaches are spending about 35 to 40% of their time coaching because they're embedded in the school and they're just helping in the school in different ways and asked to help in different ways. We have, I don't know if trained is the right word, but principals know that we don't ask coaches to do anything but coach and coach really directly to make a difference in classrooms. So where the national average is 35 to 40% of coaching time directly coaching, ours is 85 to 90. And we've been really tight and careful to track that. Again, I really feel like we have to justify this FTE, and we can and we do. We were in 400. We coached 450 teachers last year. We have around 800 teachers. Okay, next slide. So there's lots of research that's come out recently. Kraft, Glasser, and Hosen are the only ones who've been able to tie coaching to impact of student learning. It's hard to draw a straight line between I did this and so now students learned this. But they've done some good work. But another piece that they have found was by coaching, the difference in a coaching cycle is the difference between a novice, can make the difference between a novice and a experienced teacher. So they were showing that you can move up 5 to 10 years because you've had the equivalent of 5 to 10 years of experience. It's a longer research report. It's harder to explain in a soundbite, but it's astounding, and we've seen that over and over again. If you take a discrete skill, work with someone on it for a couple of weeks, it's more effective than if you tried to do it on your own for 5 to 10 years. Is basically the research that they found. Okay, so in Provo District. This is the data that I have coaches. I want them to tell me, where'd you spend your week? What topics did you spend your week? Because we want to see also across the year. We started the year spending way more time in classroom management. We moved to later in the year, we're spending more time on formative assessment and teacher clarity and some things that we really want to get after. And so we're tracking all the different ways we're working with teachers so that we can see where is the need the most, where is our impact. Across the year, it changes. I didn't expect you to be able to read this. I just wanted you to see there's lots of different ways we're tracking this. But across the year, like I said, we've got it by month, and so every coach tracks their time by month, and then across the year we can see where we're needed and where we can say, you know what, most of the time people don't need us in December, so we're going to work on this project in December, or we're going to do this kind of work in December because they're like, get out of my class, it's just about Christmas. And so we do some different things. The next one. So with every coaching cycle, there are 2 goals. The teacher sets the goal. And I just wanted to, at the end of a coaching cycle, I send something to the teacher, end of cycle to the teacher and to the coach. And I want them to reflect on how to go. What do you see in the classroom? The coach always rates them higher than they rate themselves. It's not too much different, but we're always a little bit harder on ourselves than we are on others. So it is the goal observable 100% of the time, 75% of the time, 50% of the time? So at the end of a coaching cycle, they're saying between 75 and 100% of the time, we're seeing that goal was accomplished and it's observable in the classroom. The next one. Same, and their second goal. Usually the first goal is something that the coaches kind of move them to. Like the first goal is tied to whatever the professional development is. The second one, we let the teacher just say, is there another thing you want to work on that's just your own personal thing that you want to work on? And we have roughly the same results. Next one. So this is, I asked the coaches to look at, these are new teachers only. I want them to look at where they are. So this is in August. Our new teachers, and this is this year in August, rating them a 1, a 2, or a 3. A 1 is, this is where we would expect to see a new teacher at the end of the year where we'd be very excited that they are ready to, they're a good, solid first-year teacher. A 2 is, they're decent, end of year decent. Third is, we were still very concerned about them at the end of the first year. So they're looking at, in August, if this were where they were at the end of the year, how, what would you rate them? So obviously, few first-year teachers in August are getting a, oh my gosh, they're great for their first year. This is the February rating. So we've moved them, and these are the different categories. So teacher clarity, classroom management, planning, expectations, and procedures. So across the board, we've got a real shift in our first-year teachers to they're much more competent in all of these things. And this is really a demonstration of the Kraft-Glauser-Hausen research that says they got coaching and they got better, like quickly got better. Okay, go to the next. So this is after we did the 95% coaching in, I think it was 280 classrooms. We asked the teachers, how was that? How was coaching for you? Because not everybody's worked with a coach, and we've had a reputation across our district in coaching that it is for the new and the bad. We're really trying to change that. Our best impact of coaching is when a good teacher gets coached. That's when we really see a huge shift. And so this is every teacher could benefit from working with an instructional coach. Of those surveyed, about 180 took this survey or completed the survey. And so we've got experienced and new teachers across the board. But strongly agree, neutral, disagree, there's no strongly disagree. We haven't always had the no strongly disagree. But having that experience where people were saying, veteran teachers were saying, I wouldn't have even had any idea how I could approach working with a coach and why I'd work with a coach. And after that process, they're like, this was so much faster than anything I've done. Within 2 weeks, I knew how to do the program, and I was seeing results with my students within the first 2 weeks. So that has been a fun piece. The primary goal of coaching is to improve student learning. Therefore, coaches should focus their work on strengthening the quality of teaching and learning. Lots of things coaches can do. They can be helpful in the school a lot of different ways. We're really tight on, it's got to be tied to teacher skill. We don't work with a teacher without a very specific goal that's tied to the professional development of whatever it can be something they've gone to, it can be the school-wide, it can be something that we're working on specifically across the district, but we have to say, what is the professional development goal you're trying to achieve, and then we're in. Then that's where we come and help. So we have another piece that's called a 3-chair in our district. This is when a principal identifies a teacher who is really struggling or slightly struggling. Teachers can always ask, hey, coach, can you come in and work on this? And we can just have a shoulder-to-shoulder, collegial, let's work through this. We set a goal and work through this. And then there are the teachers who are struggling. And principals they'll bring the teacher in, they bring the coach in. That's why it's called a 3-chair. There are 3 in that conversation. And the principal sets the conversation. The coach is taking notes. We all leave with, this is what the principal has asked this coach or this teacher to work on with the coach. So it sets up the coach. The coach can't come in unless they're invited. So in this way, the principal is invited. Sometimes our implementation or our professional development program is the invitation. Other times teachers invite them in. But in this case, the principal says, this is the expectation. I'd like you to change in these ways. I'd like to see these kinds of outcomes in your classroom. And coach, teacher, and principal are all on the same page with this is what we're doing, this is what we're working on. And so we call that a 3-chair. It's not comfortable for the teacher. It's not comfortable for the principal. Coach is fine with it. They're used to that process. And then the coach becomes the ally. Coaches evaluate no one. They are not put in the evaluative role at all, and that's what makes them able to coach. So the principal sets it up so then the coach goes in and works for a period of 6 weeks with the teacher to make sure that when the principal comes back, there's measurable growth and we can see a difference. Okay, so let's see if, I wonder if these are, okay. So instructional coaching, the lessons learned, it has to be tied to professional development plan. The cycles are goal-focused and agreed upon by the coach and the teacher. Coaches don't come in and tell the teacher what to do, based on student academic need. There are lots of things we could do that are nice and fun, but we're working on what are your high academic needs in your classroom. Instructional coaching is not supervisory. Everyone needs to share clear definitions what coaching is and what coaching is not. So we work a lot on that within our partnerships with our principals, particularly. Consistency among coaches is vital. We work really hard on that. We meet with coaches weekly to make sure that we've got a common definition, but also that we're very on top of what the district has asked us to do or what different principals have asked. Coaching is 2 or more experienced teachers working together to learn a new pedagogy. That's what it is. It's not, I'm coming in as an expert, move over, you're doing this wrong. It really is, let's work together and let's make some progress and enjoy what we're doing. Coaching is focused on instructional strategies and pedagogy. It moves ideas to implementation. And we might be well served by changing the term to collaborative coaching. So it's shoulder to shoulder work. Let's see, so we're just gonna keep clicking. All right, so this is a video, and we've got our own Judy Rose in the background there, that Shauna has made about coaching in our district that really sums up some of the things that I've been talking about today.
Teaching requires patience, skill, and dedication. But even the most experienced teachers can struggle to keep up with the demands of the classroom. According to the USBE Educators Exit Survey, approximately 64% of departing educators have no immediate plans to return to the classroom. About 1 in 3 educators leaving the profession listed unrealistic workload expectations as the primary contributing factor. 1 in 5 expressed a lack of training and support as a major factor. And 1 in 6 listed opportunities for career growth as a secondary factor. This is where instructional coaches come in. Instructional coaches collaborate with teachers to identify areas of strength and areas that need growth. Lessons with instructional coaches are what professional development strive to emulate. Instructional coaches in our classroom show how programs can work for our students and offer immediate feedback.
I began my career as a non-traditional teacher. I went back and got my education after my children were raised. As we attended training once a month, I really liked the goals that they had for us, and I especially liked that we came away with hands-on things that I could do the next day in my classroom. Our groups were small, so I could ask questions. My instructional coach was just fantastic. I liked the fact that she had been a teacher, and she actually came and modeled in my classroom, which was just invaluable to be able to observe her in the classroom.
Teachers and instructional coaches work shoulder to shoulder in small groups and one-on-one settings to provide individualized support that not only meet the unique needs of each teacher, but the greater needs of each school.
Last year, we began implementing new curriculum and strategies to support the science behind reading. We participated in the LETTERS professional development and started the 95% core curriculum. Instructional coaches were with teachers side by side, supporting them in this transition and modeling for them how to use the new curriculum. I'm really grateful for the support that they've provided us, and especially what they do for new teachers who have so much to learn in their first few years of teaching.
We've used our coaches in every classroom this year. We've had so many new teachers as a benefit of being here in Utah County, where we have 2 universities that feed us students that move on to other ventures in life after a year or 2. But we've needed our coaches to help get these new teachers and interns started and launched and ready to go for the school year. We've also used our coaches to implement our Wicker strategies, particularly literacy here at Dixon, where we've had a focus going school-wide and that's made a measurable change in each classroom this school year.
Coaching at Dixon has been an amazing experience this year. I've worked with many, many new teachers. I've worked with lots of experienced teachers as well. And I've seen lots of growth from both of those groups of teachers.
Instructional coaches are not limited in their ability to help new teachers. Provo teachers of all experience levels appreciate the perspective and support provided by our coaches. Instructional coaches also facilitate professional development opportunities to ensure teachers have the resources and skills they need to succeed in the classroom.
Centennial's coach has supported teachers in a 3-chair setting where me, the coach, and the teacher get together. We set goals, we talk about what's happening in the classroom. The coach will help gather data and do some observations, and then we set goals and help the teacher reach those. We've had one teacher who made a complete turnaround, like complete 180 in about 6 weeks. He changed so much about his classroom, and his engagement data skyrocketed. It's been really impressive. And I've also been really excited about how many of our veteran teachers want to work with our coach this year. That's not always what we see. It's typically known as something for new teachers, but our veteran teachers are loving it as well.
We're moving forward into new and exciting opportunities with programs such as 95% Core, Wicker, Into Math, Innovative Learning, and more. Our coaches are specialists who provide professional development in uncharted waters. Instructional coaches help teachers succeed, and when teachers succeed, students succeed.
Thank you. I know our time was way short. Any questions or any comments that you'd like to address?
Teaching requires
Sorry.
patience, skill, and
It was a good video. You should watch it twice.
Karen, I have one question.
Yeah.
With the 6 coaches we have, how are they distributed in the district? And then how do, outside of the first year teachers, is this something that teachers request that they would like to work with, or how does that
Yeah, so there's lots of different ways. We have elementary coaches. We've got, for our 13 elementary, we've got 4.9 this year because I've got some hourly people working. So we've got 4 full-time coaches in elementary, and then I've got some different. One person can give us 10 hours a month. So it's different, a little bit different chunking. But so we have 4 for our 13 schools. So coaches have either 2 or 3 schools that they're working with. They're spreading their time across. And because of our work in implementing 95%, that was just they're coming in, and the principals asked all coaches to come into all classrooms, and so everybody got a taste of that, and so coaches are now running ragged with can you come help me with this? Can you come help me with this? Can you teach this small group while I'm doing this? And can we, those kinds of things. But it's teacher request plus if we have a curriculum implementation design. So right now they're doing math implementation. Last year they worked with 4th, 5th, and 6th. Every 4th, 5th, and 6th grade teacher on implementing our new math program. This year they're going back and doing K3 with that same work. So it's tireless. They're going to be at Edgemont today modeling in classrooms, and it's been day after day. But it's teacher request, principal request, and then curriculum design. The only with new teachers, it's not that is just part of our program. Is everybody gets a coach and everybody works with a coach to complete that new teacher course.
Great, thank you.
So how many years do coaches have experience teaching before you hire them?
Oh, our average, well, we've got some that are like 25, 30 years. We've got a couple of those. But it really, I would say 12 to 15 is probably the average of what we've seen. They are master teachers. But coaching is a completely different skill set. So a good teacher does not always make a good coach. And we know that in every field of life, but yeah, they're experienced teachers. Yeah.
I see a lot of value in having our coaches. And in fact, I've got a kid in the class who's teacher in first year and was struggling, and then when a coach came in, it's been night and day as the experience for my students. It's been great. Obviously, we're going to have a lot of tough budget decisions to make. We can't get to one in every school at this point, I don't think, but what would be your next step if you could see more coaches? How many more would you want to see next?
I would love to have a full-time coach in every Title I school. I think that would be, that's really important. Right now in secondary, we only have enough coaching to really address our new teachers. We've got 0.5 in our middle schools and little less than 0.5 in our high schools, and it's one person at the high school. So all they have, there's no 3 chairs at the high schools. There's no let's work on curriculum design. We've got a few other ways we're working on that, but more secondary would be really important as well.
Any further questions from the board? Thank you so much, Karen. That was beautiful. We appreciate it so much.
So while we're transitioning to Todd, I just want to say when I came to Provo 11 years ago, we had the old model of professional development, which was if you were a teacher, it was being done to you. And so we brought in kind of a blended. There is always going to be some aspect of professional development has to cover some things that have to come down from on high, whether it's district initiatives or state initiatives or whatever. But and Anne-Marie has done a nice job of reminding us about a medical model in a lot of areas of our lives, and we kind of liken this to when a doctor goes and gets professional development, they get to choose some of the courses they go to, and they get to kind of map out their own course ahead. So we have a blend, and that's one of the reasons why I believe not only is the coaching aspect effective, but also the overall professional development satisfaction. Karen has taken this and run with it, and thank you, Karen, for doing that.
Okay, we'll go ahead and give the time to Todd McKee, who's going to give us an AVID report.
I know we're behind schedule. How much time would you like me to take or not take at this point?
You need the mic.
I mean, we're supposed to be finished with our break by 10:10, which is in 10 minutes.
So 10 minutes.
If you could do it in 10 minutes, you're going to get a big high five.
We can spill into lunch a little bit, though.
Yeah.
Give us the
I
important.
learned early on, be careful who you follow because you may fail in comparison, but also you don't want to be right before a break or lunch because your attention's going to be elsewhere. I'll do this as quickly as I can and reserve some time for questions at the end. I appreciate Karen really emphasizing the importance of instructional practice and instructional strategies because that's really, it's not on?
I think I turned it off, sorry about that.
That's okay. How's that?
There you go.
Yep.
All right. So emphasizing instructional strategies and practice and trying to build that repertoire with our teachers, that's what really AVID's all about. Quick background, AVID started in the late 1980s or so down in San Diego. High school teachers were looking at all these students that were academically capable, but were not taking advanced placement courses. And so their intention was, what is it that we can do to help fill that void, to help students get into these advanced courses? And that's the origin story for AVID. For us, AVID has really become more about an instructional framework to help our teachers, again, develop the tools and add tools to their toolbox to help all kids. So very quickly, what is AVID for us? It's an instructional framework. Its purpose is really about serving all kids in closing the opportunity gap. And I intentionally use the word opportunity gap. Okay? And we do that through what AVID refers to as WICR. WICR stands for Writing, Inquiry, Collaboration, Organization, and Reading. These are the cognitive skills and academic skills that we don't, in all cases, intentionally teach day in and day out. And so by providing a framework and a real focus on these 5 areas, we're really trying to get to every student and help build their confidence beyond just what they're learning in terms of math or science or history to move on and take advanced coursework. Now the question becomes, is every student going to pursue higher education? We talked about college. Well, not necessarily. We know that. I've been asked this throughout my career. Why are you emphasizing college and career? Not every kid's going to go to college. That's true. But the skills that employers are looking for, and I've heard this repeatedly, the skills that they're looking for are the same skills that universities are looking for entry level into the university. And so why not provide the students with options? The more options they have post-high school, the better, and college being one of those options. Okay? There is a framework around this. I could teach a graduate course on, I can do a seminar on this around Dave Conley's work and his work with the College Board and others around what does it mean to be college and career ready. Just know that it's really about helping kids think, know, act, and go. That's the kind of the framework that we're operating on, and we address all 4 of these in our schools, particularly the high schools. And Wicker fits neatly into the 2 that oftentimes get missed, the cognitive skill and then the academic skill. Okay? So our approach here in the Provo District is 2-pronged approach. Oh, well, that wasn't very nice. That was my, what's that? Microsoft has been finicky lately.
So if you don't know, Todd writes.
Just a little bit.
This is Todd's joy.
Someone suggested it would be kind of fun if I had rode in this morning on my bike, but no one wants to see me in a bike kit. Oh, I'm sorry about this. Where did it go? Anyway, I'll save time. You can take a look. This is the Red Bridge on your way up the Snake River onto Jackson Hole. Our approach is really 2-pronged in the district. So originally, AVID emphasized a kind of a program approach where it focused in on those kids that are caught in the middle, typically 2.0 to 3.5. These are the kids that are oftentimes left out. I would hear oftentimes as a principal, you put all this resource into the top end or into the low end. What about the kids in the middle? How do we support them? AVID intentionally is trying to, oh, this is great. You know? There we go. Wow. Thanks, guys. AVID is intentionally trying to help these kids in the middle. Okay? And many of our schools, when we initially pushed into this 6 years ago, that was their focus, is looking at those students that would be called first-generation students, kids that they haven't had a past family history of college. How do we target them and help them get into this class, an AVID class that would prepare them for advanced placement courses and then hopefully moving on post-high school. Okay? So it evolves around this elective class. And the class provides tutoring. We go out and we hire college students to come in and tutor kids on a weekly basis. And it's pretty powerful. Some of you have visited Dixon with me, where we've seen that in practice. And then we ask these students, if you're part of AVID in the program aspect of it, that you commit to at least try one advanced placement course at some point in your high school career. Okay, so that's the aspect of the program. Current year, you can see that we have a pretty good group of students in the AVID courses in our four secondary schools right now. Right? 108 at Centennial, 114 at Timpview, and then 56 and 66 between Dixon and Provo High. Okay? So the tutorials is a big aspect to the elective class. This is where those college students are working with those kids to think deeply about what they're learning. The other aspect of this is Wicker. And this is really, it supports the kids in the elective class, but this is where we have taken the second prong of our approach and really pushed it out school-wide. And this is the focus on reading, writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, and reading. So the bookends of literacy, content literacy, focused around these skills of collaboration, organizing, and thinking critically. Right? And within each of these, you can see there are a host of strategies that teachers can utilize on a day in and day out basis to help kids kind of reach these and start to develop these areas. Okay. All of these are supported by the research literature. If we go back to visible learning, which has been really prominent in our district, this fits neatly and actually in many ways supports it, helps us take, oftentimes there's a gap between research and practice, and this is making that bridge between the two. And it's actually provided a nice framework where our teachers are now saying, yes, I get it, I can walk into this. Okay. Some of our students, I'll just save this for you. You can take a look at this. This is a response from our students this year, a 7th grader and then a high school senior that have been in the AVID program. It is making a difference in terms of how they start to see themselves as a learner. Okay, so school-wide, this is the second prong. This is how we're pushing out with the WICR, where we're seeing WICR in all classes, not just for the AVID kids, but for every kid. The important strategy here that I just want to really emphasize is that this is teacher-led and principal-directed, right? This is not just purely coming from the bottom up, teachers all on their own, kind of doing their own thing, and it's certainly not top-down, where it's being mandated by the principal. They are working together and meeting in the middle. You know, the instructional coaches that Karen has worked with us on with the last 2 years, we've had WICR coaches using ESSER money, the federal recovery money. We've been able to do that in all of our secondary schools. These are teachers that are on staff, have credibility with the rest of the staff. They've been leading the professional development around WICR, and all the feedback I'm receiving, both from teachers as well as from the administration, has been very powerful. They're developing literacy and academic skills. How are they doing it? Developing instructional strategies. You know, I really, years ago, I shared this just tidbit with you. Again, I'm trying to rush to meet the time limit here. But years ago, I was having a conversation at a conference with some colleagues from Brookline, Massachusetts. And we're talking about strategies. And what really impressed me in that conversation was this teacher was saying, look, in my district, we don't teach just one approach. We try to teach our teachers or prepare our teachers to provide all approaches, because no one approach is going to serve the needs of all kids. And by providing a broad framework that allows teachers some choice and ability in trying to develop their repertoire, develop more tools for the toolbox, we believe they're reaching more kids than they would if we were really somewhat tunnel visioned on this. And I think that's what we're really starting to see pay off. And so again, it's why are we doing this? We're wanting to close the opportunity gap for kids, give them more options once they leave us, whether it's to go into career, go into tech, go into the university. They have the skills that we know that they'll need to be able to survive. Okay? With that, there's some school-wide structures that we've put in place that impact the culture, the leadership, the systems, as well as the instructional piece. We've done a lot of training over the past 6 years. You get a sense of that. Our first 2 schools in 2018 were Dixon and Timpview. We've Centennial and Provo, and then Independence has joined in the last 2 years. We're really thrilled that this summer Canyon Crest will be joining us. That this is really a K-12 approach, and I mentioned this yesterday in some training over at Lakeview. The more common our language is between levels of schools, the more powerful our impact will be on kids, and the better it will be for us in terms of getting feedback, gathering data, understanding what we're doing. And so we see AVID also providing just a common framework in which we can all operate from K-12. So total trained, 228 teachers, 68 of them have been able to travel away in the summer and go to what's called Summer Institute, which is a 3-day professional development experience. That's really highly prized. They like that idea because part of it is you're not just sitting in a hotel, working through some professional development, but there's time crafted at the end of each day for those teams to get back together, those teachers, and talk about what is it that you're hearing, how do we start to put this together in our school this coming year. There's a lot of synergy around that. Okay? So with that.
Pretty good. Very good.
I almost made it. I tried.
Did that in 13 minutes, and that was great.
That's a lot. That's a lot of information dump. I appreciate your patience. You know, I think if you get out in the schools, talk to the administration, talk to some of the teachers. I know some of you had an opportunity to go to the national conference to see some of it. It really is something that, I think you're seeing. It's teacher-led and principal-directed.
Todd mentioned the demo at Dixon coming up at later in the month.
Yes, so on the 30th, the region has been so impressed with how we've moved district-wide with AVID. They've really been pressing us to do what they call a showcase. And it's an opportunity, it's basically an open house where other schools and districts that are interested in learning more about AVID can come in and see how we've implemented. And so we've held off with COVID and everything, but we finally gave in, and on March 30th, Dixon will be our first showcase from 8:15 to 10:45. I know the board, I believe you're on NSBA, on a flight to NSBA, but we do intend to have a follow-up, and they're really interested in how we've implemented at Timpview. The last thing I'll say is all 4 of our schools that have implemented have taken a little bit different approach, and they're somewhat unique to their situation, and there's something to learn from each of them. And Timpview's pretty unique in that they started as a all 9th grade. We want all 9th grade, and we're going to roll this kind of forward through the 12th grade. So their implementation is unique that way.
Okay. Thank you so much, Todd. I'm a huge advocate for this program. I love this program. So I feel like I know a good amount about it. I don't have any questions for you, but does anybody else have any questions for Todd?
I just have one quick question.
Yeah.
So you put up how many at each school. Why are we seeing a lower amount at Dixon and Provo High?
Partly because their implementation was a year behind, and then that implementation coincided right with COVID. So they are behind simply because they haven't had that face-to-face interaction and really tried to develop it. But what I'm seeing is this year it's really starting to take the traction that we'd expect. So I would expect those numbers to rise next year and continue to rise in the coming years.
I have a question. I love the AVID program. I've seen great things at Timpview from it. I like that it's gone school-wide in terms of the shared language around reading instruction, writing, all of that. I guess my question is kind of with you and with Karen and what you're doing. These Wicker skills aren't unique, of course, to AVID, as evidenced by the attempt to take these things K-12, school-wide, et cetera. So I'm curious about the collaboration, I guess, between the program that you're doing and then the coaching and the support and the rollout. Is that something that you and Karen do collaboratively? Are those separate? Like, is coaching for teaching and learning separate than coaching for AVID, et cetera?
So great question. What I can say is, you know, we were 2018 when we rolled out in 2 schools. 2019 we're starting it in the other 2, and then COVID hit just right at the heels of that. It actually, COVID provided us an opportunity to take AVID to the next level and to also reach out and do some unique work with Karen, because we were able to receive a lot of federal funding. And a big chunk of that was was allocated to train. You saw how many teachers we've been able to train. That's all through federal funding. It also allowed us to work with Karen to set up instructional coaching that was Wicker specific in all of our secondary schools for the past 2 years. So we've started that partnership, and we've had that in place for the last 2 years. We absolutely would love to continue to move forward, but that was all funded through federal funds.
So do you, when you say to train, are those separate kind of mentors or trainers
So-
from you
Yep.
versus from our professional
Yeah,
development
and
coach?
let me clarify, I appreciate that, and I need to clarify that. So when I say trained, it's that 3-day experience at Summer Institute. So all those teachers have had 2 to 3 days of intense training about how do we start to implement Wicker in our lesson planning. Where does it fit, where does it not? How do I start to do this? So there's 2 intensive days of that. And then what the coaching has done is they've come in over the course of this academic year to work with teachers individually. And then I know that they are leading the professional development at the school every month in a staff meeting where they're talking about specific strategies. Hey, have you tried this in the writing as opposed to this maybe in the inquiry? And, you know, it's really been school-based on that end, but there's been a nice synergy between the 2 departments.
That's great, because what we saw from the slide that Karen had, right, is that all that money all that time and all that training, without the coaching, we stay at our 5% versus 95.
It's that coaching piece, that support piece during the school year for the past 2 years has really been important as we've moved this forward, been able to move this forward.
May I clarify on that too? Because those Wicker coaches, they are distinct roles and they've worked under Todd. There's been some coordination, but it's really a school effort with Todd. But we don't have those funded because the ESSER funds are over. So I don't know of plans to continue the coaching.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any further questions? Awesome, okay, I think we will still take a break. It's 10:19, let's take 6 minutes, 10:25. I swear, I have it in here.
Maybe two, I don't know.
68. Then we'll all be like sweating and buzzing.
65.
Okay.
All right, let's go. Let's
All
go
right,
even lower.
everybody, if we could, aren't we doing Doug first? Doug. Doug is first. I'm
Doug,
Chad.
you're up. You're before me.
Doug, you're on the agenda before Chad. Okay. Are we back online? Are we back online? We never are. Okay, great. Are you all right? Okay, everybody, welcome back. We are going to start with an attendance policy update from Doug Finch, and we will give you your time, Doug.
Okay, thank you. We could spend a lot of time on this, but again, because we are on a very, ambitious day, we'll just kind of cover some of the basics. This has been an ongoing conversation the Board of Education has been having with Student Services, and the superintendent directed me to take the time this year to do a very thorough relook at our attendance policies and procedures. So this is a date we've had kind of earmarked as the time to come have some how are we doing, right? And so it hasn't been the first, it won't be the last conversation about this, but I hope that you've been given enough information that you can read and get back to. I also appreciate the fact that many of the board members have been initiating a board review monthly meeting where some of that feedback can also be given to our committee that way. So just big picture, we're hoping that again, it's been over 10 years since the attendance policy in the school district's been looked at, and and we hope to have something in place that the schools can begin to utilize next year. Okay? So the first slide here just shows what our process has been. We've been tried to be very thorough. We've done a lot of things you can see on that left-hand slide over that we've done a lot of research. We've worked with our legal consultant. We've spent a lot of time in state code, and we've also been sending out drafts of this throughout the school year to a lot of our school employees, particularly those who work at the attendance a lot. That would be attendance secretaries, administrators, some of our front office staff, our attendance specialists who work here at the district offices with Claudia's team. And so we've been getting feedback for a number of months on the procedural things. It's been really quite interesting to see that while it might have been maybe only 10 years or so since we've looked at attendance policy, attendance code, particularly in the state of Utah, has changed quite dramatically. So we'll just point that out on some of the things that we learned here. So here's some things again, I won't read all of these bullets, but I think that there's some real interesting notes here about how there has been a shift a lot to parents' rights in education. Attendance has been one of those. We saw a lot of advocacy for let me excuse my kids whenever and however and for whatever I'd like, kind of an approach that's been within the legislation. There's been definitions that have been changed. I'll get to that in just a little bit about how we're going to identify what we mean by different terms within attendance. And then we also have these outside agencies who have supported us, historically for years, DCFS and law enforcement. But there was a moratorium during COVID where we said we weren't going to do anything about, and understandably, around compulsory attendance. As we've come back online with them the last year or two, I'll use this word not intended to indict anybody, but they just have expressed to us they have low appetite, resources, time, the capacity. Frankly, even statute has changed somewhat to where they don't feel like they're going to do a lot of prosecution of that state code of compulsory education. They still acknowledge that it's important, but they're going to use non-judicial methods, kind of like we do, of trying to be more supportive of families and figuring out how to get their kids to school based on their needs as a family. This next slide here, I think that we also have found, and you're hearing recent articles around this new term that I think is, rather than talking just about truancy, chronic absenteeism is a new vernacular that we were trying to also be on top of as a system, and saying in the past our attendance policies all dealt with unexcused absences, or often referred to as truancies. We want to look at absenteeism for any reason, and knowing that the research behind this is showing that once you've reached what they say chronic absenteeism, which means you've missed 10% or more, that's about an average of 2 class periods per month, there begins to be a notable impact on lots of things, including, of course, learning, but also social connections, confidence, anxiety associated with being in school and doing well. And so if this is the first time in this rewrite of our attendance policy and procedures, I'm going to try and see what we can do to embed some of what we call research-informed practices around how to support students who are having a difficult time with chronic absenteeism. So one of the things that is also noted, and those who were watching the legislation closely this year noted that there was an attendance amendment law that was passed at the end of that session, and it's talked a lot about this language of making sure that we're using evidence-informed models and practices that asks us to start to look to address, and it actually kind of directs the State Board of Education to start this. So I would see this as a trend coming out in the upcoming years, as there's been now funds and a directive given to the State Board of Education to start studying evidence-based practices for how to address chronic absenteeism. Regardless of whether the parent excuses it or not, we need to address absenteeism as being a chronic problem for learning in our schools. So here's some of the things that we found as we've looked through, and we spent some time, given a little bit of time to write this policy, we had spent some time trying to look through some of the studies that have been done. Very difficult to find ones that have got really a control group. So when you talk about how technical the studies have been done, we have some that we'd say are correlative or evidence-informed or evidence-suggestive studies that say the following 8 things would be practices that they find are helpful in assisting students and families engage more frequently and effectively at school. So we're looking to these types of practices then as ones that we're going to implement in terms of our tiered response to how we want to have schools support students and families at school. Any questions you see this list? Is it just kind of those that have again been educational research know how difficult it is to find that causal type of relationship that's really empirical out there, but there have been a number of studies based on pilots and programs that have been funded across the country in the last decade or so. And these are some well-written studies that some even have smaller n sizes, so it's tough to say it's duplicatable in other locations, but still, this is research that I think will still give us some attempt to do things different than we've done in the past, because that's what I think I take from the legislation is just don't continue to just send everyone to truancy court, just don't continue to try and send everyone to some sort of outside agency to solve. Schools need to maybe do a lot more to really look at the whole child, look at their well-being, how can we support them through these types of means.
Doug, we already have a bunch of those in place, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell me which ones? I'll just go through the numbers and tell me
Yeah,
yes or no.
I would say that this is a work that we do with our social workers. This is, again, a real benefit in Provo with having a licensed clinical social worker in each of our schools. Oftentimes when you come across students are having anxiety about being in school, getting out of their homes, so it's just not about getting them another alarm clock, but they need what might be more of a therapeutic approach to that. We have this kind of work that's happening in all our schools. It's pretty intensive. It's time required there, but there are some really good results we've found here locally as well as some national studies on that. This has been a long-standing tradition here in Provo of getting out and visiting homes. I've got a team of 6 or 7 student family advocates do a lot of this work. Our 18 social workers spend a lot of time out just going to the doorsteps of homes and saying, we haven't seen you in a long time, you're not answering your calls. How do we re-engage with you? And so these home visits are really important. Family engagement has been a real emphasis here in Provo for a long time. I could go on and on. This community-based court approach is something that we have had history in doing, but we're trying to revamp this. Again, we don't have a lot of willingness from our local courts to come and offer a judge to support us anymore. But we're looking at and trying to come up with something that's a similar model we call more of a hearing approach to.
So is that our youth court?
Yeah.
Currently?
Well, this could be, would it be appropriate for our youth court to do this, that they do that for other types of offenses in schools? The juvenile justice system doesn't want to look like, which is truancy is one of them. So we're looking at some ways to implement something like this. These certainly are some of the key ones about connection back at the school. These are a lot of great tier 1 things to do back in schools. And then this is something we've implemented the last couple of years during COVID and so forth. We just had last night, Claudia and myself and a team, we met with about 3 or 4 families last night and then came up with some great problem solving around a mediation effort for some of our most difficult attendance cases right now, and had some real effectual results come out of that just last night for some families. So. Great point. So let's just keep sliding. I want to be, again, sensitive to the time. This is a model you see over and over again as it relates to behavior and education, academics, so forth. This is a model that we're just going to say is, again, researched and evidence-based as an approach to take things. The whole idea that all get these foundational pieces to help schools be engaging, welcoming, relevant to kids. That certainly is a piece of them wanting to attend. But then we have within their universal protections that would prevent kids from getting into absenteeism, early interventions, and then our most intensive. I just will say that, and we just have been receiving some of the reports. I was running the numbers actually, and then Todd forwarded me a report that he just recently received that our schools, within our school district, if you were to look right now, range anywhere from the numbers of students that are chronically absent, meaning they're missing 10% or more right now. They range anywhere from about 20 to 25% in some of our schools, all the way up to into the 40 to 50% of kids in our schools currently, as of today, are having a difficult time with chronic absenteeism. So you can see that's a significant way to consider absent for any reason is a concern. We know that it's impacting kids, learning at school. Gina?
So the chronic, I read over that report. Remind me, Todd, or did the chronic absenteeism that it showed in there per school, was that including truancy as well?
It should. Again, the absenteeism says if you miss for absence that's unexcused, excused, you're suspended, you are on a sports team and you've missed because, so all the reasons that you wouldn't be in class is what the end number is for the numerator on that percentage. So again, that's a different look that I think that we've evolved into, and I think we kind of see general school management's evolving into this conversation about, 1, being evidence-based, and 2, looking at kids missing for any reason and identifying how we can develop policies and procedures to support families to be aware of and engage with us in problem solving. Okay? All right, so from here, this is a very non-scientific little project here, but I asked our attendance secretaries and our specialists who work at the district level who support our most egregious non-attenders to help me just identify what are the types of reasons that we're seeing, what are the causes of perhaps of students right now missing a lot of school, and these were our top 8, and so this was done here listed as the most prevalent. You can see 1 through 8 are just kind of reported. This is we haven't run any sort of scientific study on this. We haven't asked patrons and kids. This is your attendance secretaries. This is your people who are working with students who are having a hard time engaging right now. These would be some of the reasons that we're seeing as a school district that are being reported as why kids are having a hard time coming to school. The list over to the right with just the bulleted items, these were occasional things that we're seeing, but weren't as prevalent as was reported as some of these factors. And again, this is for the most chronic, attenders, that when you'd say, what are we seeing as the barrier for engagement, that left-hand side is there. So. All right, so with that, and again, trying to keep on time here, I just wanted to probably go from here into looking at the policy and procedure. It won't be on the screen here, but it's it's a little bit of a labor of love there. If you open up that document, your board docs, you'll see that the policy was written as, again, about 2014, and you'll see just by the format that we take as a council on working on policy, you'll see that the first document, 3150, the attendance policy, it has strikeout on anything that was going to be removed, is recommended to be removed from the policy. And you'll see about 4 pages of strikeout because it had a lot of content in there, just was somewhat anecdotal thoughts and this and that about attendance. And I just kind of narrowed it down to 3 directive paragraphs like our other policy format, those that are on the policy committee. We had this discussion just earlier this month, right, about how we want to state a purpose and a goal. You'll note that this one I try and quote directly from state code around what compulsory attendance means, right? Also referred to another policy that's a way that a means by which someone can get exempt from that policy, right? That's the next policy that's noted. And then essentially a directive that the Board of Education directs the superintendent to address attendance and then gives an outline. And that outline of those 6 or 7 categories are the ones that we address in our policy. Maybe see if there's one more slide here. Thank you. So these 6 areas are the breakdown of what the procedure then follows. So any question about 3150, the policy, before maybe then we go to the procedure, and I'll just take you through a fast walk through. It's about 12 to 14 pages. It's been a labor of love for sure to work on. But I want to just make sure first and foremost, because you as the Board of Education, your governance role, and again, whether you want to give that now or to the representatives who work with our policy committee, feedback for us on how we'll work toward bringing to you at some point, not today, a vote on approving the changes to the 3150 policy. But if there's no questions to that piece, we can move to the procedure really quickly. You'll note in the procedure, and I'm sorry, it's not going to be up here, Bonnie, but the 3150, the first section on there is, again, the definitions. And I was back and forth as to whether to include all the definitions, but because the definitions are so technical, and oftentimes they're kind of used interchangeably, it was best to get everyone clear about what we mean when we use terms around attendance. What does it mean to have an unexcused absence versus a truancy versus being cited for skipping or cutting? I guess we use the term sloughing. As the more I looked up that term, it's so funny. I said, it says right in Wikipedia, it says pretty much only used in Utah. so I thought, well, there's our local vernacular. There we go, right up there with fry sauce, right? So I'm trying to use the word skipping or cutting. It kind of travels more nationally, right?
Seriously, sloughing drives me crazy.
I wasn't even quite sure how to spell it, with a GH or with 2 Fs. I wasn't quite sure, but anyway. Right. So you'll even see as you scroll through that definition section, there's a key component there, the definition of an excused absence. We didn't come up with those 8 different reasons why a parent can have the right to excuse their absence. That's taken right from the legislation on state code associated with parents' rights in education. It's hard to find something that doesn't really fit in 1 through 8. I mean, you can find some things, but 1 through 8 just gives kind of that blank check to saying, are you going to really take on, is the tone going to be that schools are going to take on parents and saying, you don't have a right to excuse your child? Or are we just going to just really understand that's the nature of this game, and let's now work with parents on solving a problem as opposed to making it a contentious relationship, right? That's just essentially, just in a nutshell, what I catch from that. I think that another thing that's important for you to understand is it's near the bottom, but there's a definition there for what they say truancy is. We use that term just really kind of loosely, but now there is a technical definition on the state code that talks about truancy being missing at least half the day and only being able to have had an occurrence of truancy once per school day. So now in elementary, that seems pretty straightforward. Yeah, you've missed half the school day, and of course, you only get marked absent once at an elementary school. Secondary schools, it's kind of been like, whoa, how many truancies can you get in a day? And that's why I think that legislation was generated, is so that it articulates more cleanly between elementary and secondary. If you were a student at, say, Provo High School and you had 4 class periods a day, using old terminology, you could have had 4 truancies in a day by missing 4 class periods. Now, and again, thanks to Eugene and Bruce's work with Power School and so forth, we're going to generate reports that help schools figure out how to identify truancy by looking at how many class periods someone missed based on their class schedule, right? And we've got 3 different models in our secondary schools, so that's even adds that much more of an element of fun to our data folks to figure out how to create 3 different reports for our 3 different models of secondary schooling. So anyway, so that's probably a piece to know, that the state code, as you'll kind of see once it goes past the definition sections. I took the opportunity of looking at previous policy. Part of that blacked out section that you saw from the policy, it talked about different stakeholders' responsibilities. I liked that. I liked identifying that this just isn't one person's responsibility to be accountable to. All of us have to be engaged in the work of school attendance. There's a role for students. There's a role for parents of students. And state code calls out what that role is, right? There's a role for teachers, frankly. Everything from welcoming and inviting and engaging to marking to notifying when a student's not doing well in class, right? There's some obligations there I wanted to delineate in that part of the policy. And then there's, of course, an administrative staff's role as it relates to attendance and how to work with parents effectively. So that section is the section 2 in our policy. Section 3, I believe, gets into what we can call, you saw the slide earlier, what we'll call our tiered responses to absenteeism and truancy. So in the past it just said truancy, but I really want to, again, in this effort to say this is really be a really superficial policy if we were going after truancy. And some of our building administrators say it doesn't take long for people to figure out that they can get off the hot seat with truancy by just using one of the 8 reasons to always excuse their kids. Now, not everyone's in that boat, but there's many that were feeling quite like, what's the point? Truancy is something to be excused away so quickly by parents, and they have right to do so. So I wanted to build into this section, and I'll admit it has some work to do to make it more user-friendly, maybe flow charts and things to support schools. But you'll kind of see it goes through a tier 1, a tier 2, a tier 3 approach that we've gotten a lot of feedback from our schools on how to give them the ability to work with the whole group as a school, smaller groups of kids that might have common problems, and then at the tier 3 level, those administrative conferences, or as I mentioned earlier, the one-on-one meetings in conferences, we call them truancy prevention conferences, or in mediation. Or you'll note also there that we pitched some ideas about an attendance school. Now that's why you'll see that in like the tier 2. Not everyone needs to go to an attendance school, but we can take targeted groups of students who begin to become chronically absent and assign them an online course to complete that they and their parents learn the importance and learn some of the skills associated with making good decisions, and just be aware of what the goals are and the impacts are of attending school. I really want to have that positive presupposition that a lot of our parents, a whole lot of our parents, have a desire to have their kids do well in school and want to engage with them being in school. I know that the Board of Education, you've talked about your own kids at times and saying, My kid needs to be in school, and I want them to be, sometimes they don't want to be, so I'd want to be in a great relationship with the school and working out how to compel and motivate them to get there. I'm hoping that these types of ideas give them the tools. So tier 1 is whole school, tier 2 is smaller groups of kids, getting letters, giving, referred to go to classes that be taught in big groups, and then tier 3, you'll see that feels more individual, right? Call the family, give them a notice of truancy, a notice of chronic absenteeism, and invite them to come to a conference where we work some things out that solve the attendance problems for the kids. Below that, you'll see our referral system that we have that's still in place with outside agency. We've got the Division of Juvenile Justice Youth Services. We've got DCFS there. We've got the county attorney. We've got a number of organizations that we're in constant communication with them about how to make sure we've got plenty of documentation so that when they join in, I won't say that we can hand these kids off. When they join in and working with the family, that we've all done good best practice work in getting them to that point. So that's that's probably the heart of what any attendance procedure is how do we respond to kids who aren't attending? And that's the part that our schools will probably continue up through the next couple of weeks and so forth, continue to give refinement and feedback to us as we develop that, right? So we plan on holding another feedback meeting with them probably here at the end of the month or 1st of April as a last read before we then will probably come to you in an April board meeting for your approval. The last sections in there also give, and I think this is probably important for you to note, you'll note that it's very much a working draft. You'll see some things in italics. There's 2 sections in there. Have you found that where I wrote it in italics? This is kind of a back and forth question around chronic absenteeism, and Todd brought this up in our discussion in council the other day. Should attendance directly or indirectly impact grades, right? And we've had some discussion. We've had some great people come present work with us on standards-based grading and learning and so forth. And it's hard to say that effort, and achievement should be, muddied. And so philosophically, you'll see there's note of a district policy we have in the 4000 series that talks about separating attendance and grading. I've got some language I've found in my research and looking at other district policies and so forth of how some districts have used some through disclosure, particularly through the participatory classes, right? A class where it's hard to make up for what you didn't do because you weren't there, whether it be a performance or a physical education or a CTE course that just seems like it's really hard for someone to make up the work that was done if they're not in class. So I tried to identify some potential wording. Wouldn't mind if, again, some point, if you wanted to send me some feedback on that, as to saying if you'd like us to look at how we can align those 2 policies. This one here in attendance is what could potentially be the impact of attendance directly on grading, or again, the one that's in the 4000 series I cite there. I'll leave that to you to give us feedback moving forward, okay? But again, I know we're on a tight schedule here. I don't need to open this for probably a 2-hour discussion here today. But the last thing that I'll note beyond that is that you'll see that there is some guidelines, and many of you are aware who are watching what's going on at some of the local schools. Timpview High School, for instance, right now is ready next Wednesday to launch their effort to get on top of attendance policy. And I've been working with Momi and her team throughout the school year, actually, to align some of our thinking and thoughts. So I'm grateful. She's kind of running a little bit of a pilot. But you'll note there we want to give allowance to schools to do the kind of work that Timpview is trying to do, saying, now, if you want to do specific things related to maybe code of conduct or eligibility for sports or run a detention after school, we don't want necessarily to maybe leave a policy there that doesn't allow for some of that local initiative to how they want to solve problems. So I included that section there to try and give some guidelines that their elementary or secondary supervisor would need to read or review and approve their plan, that it doesn't fall out of alignment of what we establish as district policy, but they can do some specific initiatives to get after attendance with their local initiatives. So that's essentially, in a nutshell, short of an appeal process at the end, that's my fun project that I do when I've got time. So I'll just pause there, and knowing, again, Rebecca, you manage the time how you feel like you'd like to. I just make myself available to answer questions now, or we can come back to this discussion some other time. But I'm grateful for the opportunity to give you guys an update on the assignment.
I think if anybody has any feedback or questions for Doug, maybe we can forward those to him later via email, because I know this isn't our last reading. We still have some more time to work on this. So let's go ahead and if you don't mind, skip that part. And if you have any questions or feedback, please get it to Doug. And then we'll see this again, I'm sure. So, okay, thank you so much, Doug, for all your work on this. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a great little learning project.
Okay, while Chad's getting set up, I'll just introduce our next item that we'll be talking about today, which is the new online attendance tracking system that Chad is working on. And we'll be given, as I understand it, a demonstration today in real time. So we've been looking forward to
No,
this.
that's a lie.
That's a lie, okay.
Yeah. We were going to try and do that. I mean, I'll explain why we weren't able
Okay,
to do it.
so then I will stop talking and stop assuming, and we'll let Chad take over here.
We have a few pictures of it and that kind of thing we can show you. But before I go into this, in tech, Keith, how have we done in technology over the course of the last 12, 13 years since you've been here? Done a decent job, right?
Almost everything I've asked you to do.
Almost everything. That's pretty good. I think we've done pretty well. But there's a secret to our success you may not be aware of.
51%, by the way.
Yeah. There's a secret to, there's a secret to our success, and I'm going to tell you what it is. Okay? And we're going to actually present one to you, Keith, as you continue through your superintendency and then into your retirement. This is important. So tech, we use this ancient artifact to make decisions. Okay? And we consult it when we have to make really important decisions like, do we reboot the server tonight? What does tech want to eat for lunch? You know, those type of things. In fact, Gene, do you want to, let's put it in front of Keith. We'll have him open it after I kind of explain it. So we have this ancient artifact. It came in a wooden crate, but when it got to Eugene's house, it was destroyed, so you had to pull it out of the crate and neatly pack it into there with peanuts and everything. It's in there. We had one of our techs bring it about 25 years ago. I don't know where he found this thing, but it is really cool. It's cool in how it makes decisions. It's cool in what it does. And the main reason we got it for you was snow days. I don't know how many more of those we're going to have, but it'll help you in deciding whether or not you have a snow day. It's kind of voodoo, you know. We could call it. You compare it to like a round ball of curious workmanship, you know, like a Honolea sort of thing. You know, you could do something like that. It's kind of like. You call it voodoo, black magic, you know, sorcery, any of those types of things. So my ex-stepdad, he used to make decisions facing north. He'd face north and he'd ask north questions, and north would push you or pull you in different directions, right? So he kind of had these potions and different things that he'd ask north how much he should give him, stuff
Not
like that.
exactly
So
data-driven
it's not that much of a voodoo type of a thing that we're talking about. Now to give you a little bit more, it's very intricate in how it works. You gotta know how to use this thing. Too much excitement, too much movements can cause a different outcome. It's not a Ouija board, but it's the closest thing to a magic wand we could think of. Okay. So instructions. This is like Jumanji. Once you roll the dice, you're sucked in. You don't make decisions contrary to what it's telling you to do. Okay. So that's one of the things. You can ask it questions like, should we have a snow day today? Should we have a late start? Do we do an online learning day? Do we give my staff the month off? You know, that's an important question. Right, guys? Yeah, see, Doug's in agreement over there. Should Chad receive his random flogging? I don't know, today. Should we give everyone a $25,000 raise? And if it says no, you say, do we give everyone a $50,000 raise? If it says no, you keep going until it stops. That's how important this device is. Okay, we got some warnings for you. Like I said, once you roll the dice, you're sucked in. Our experience in tech is you do not go against its recommendations. And truly, we use this device, so you may think it's funny, but we do. We make a few decisions with this. We don't go against it, and the few times we have, we've paid the price. Okay, you will regret it. There's hell to pay if you don't do what it asks you to do. So there's some questions you shouldn't ask. Should I celebrate my wife's birthday? I wouldn't ask it that question. You know, you just do it. Or should I wear a bathing suit to work today? You know, those are the type of questions you probably shouldn't ask this thing. But with that, Keith, let's have you go ahead and open it and show everybody what it looks like. Be careful, though. It's kind of fragile. The magic 8 ball.
It smells kind of funny.
Yeah, that's because it was packed anciently in that box. So Keith, my only comments to this is use it wisely, use it often, and may God have mercy on your soul. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
All right, into the real presentation now. Oh, and then Susie wanted me to mention, so on Tuesday in PD Day, 9:45 at Provo High, if you're interested to know how ChatGPT functions, And what it really is, Susie is doing, she's done a lot of research and to figure out and talk about this. So if it's something you're interested in, you know, you may, what's that?
What is the
It's the AI, yeah, writing your own papers for you, that type of stuff. If you want to be, it'll be an interesting presentation, so she wanted me to mention that.
On
Tuesday at 9:45 at Provo High. Yeah, we'll have a critical conversation about what it is, how it works, and what its implications might be.
It'll be interesting. I'm excited to hear it. So, all right, into electronic attendance. So we were given this task in a meeting, I don't know if it was a year and a half ago, Keith, but it was a while ago. We started looking into this. We talked to architects who said that they had done it in other school districts. We talked to Ogden School District who said they had it deployed. And we searched online. We asked other state tech directors. We did a lot of research trying to find people that have done this. Ogden did it for a very short time. One of their high schools, they did it for a little bit more than a term, and then kids were clocking in and then running out. You know, so they had some of those things. We were definitely on the bleeding edge of this technology. We actually, to get it rolling, we got one of our vendors who works a lot with PowerSchool doing our class choice system and stuff like that. He's the one that started developing a product and is allowing us to help. So currently, we're piloting this at Provo High with Tori Norman over there. The reason we use Tori is he has several classes, but he also does CAPS offsite. So we could test the offsite component of that. The requirements we had, the program's got to work with PowerSchool. It's got to work through an API. We need to be able to communicate back and forth, push attendance back and forth, push live data. Now, it's funny, we didn't used to track present codes. We always did absent codes. Present was never anything we had to do, but now, with this type of approach, you have to have a present. Because yes, they scanned in, they are present, or an absent. We utilize the bell schedule and class schedule from PowerSchool. We have to identify the teachers and the students in the system, so they have to know which class they're in, who the teacher is, all that type of stuff. And then we have to allow for every teaching location to take attendance. And we're using things like QR codes, barcodes, RFID, near field. We'll get into those a little bit more. Based on the PowerSchool schedule, each morning it pulls the information from PowerSchool into this system. It's looking at day rotation, class schedules, the enrollments, all of that. Any changes to the bell schedule have to be made before 5 a.m. And the reason is, and if things happen like a late start or a snow day or things like that, we have to get into that system after that time frame and change it. Otherwise, what happens is we'll have a ton of attendance calls going out, and it'll make Caleb's life miserable. So, and I kind of like making Caleb's life miserable, but this is what I do. And if the 5 a.m. time is missed, attendance will be needed taken manually. So there is that option too, where they can take it manually if they need to. So to identify the system has to assign at the beginning of each class period so that it basically creates a kiosk. And I'll show you a picture in a minute. We have a Chromebook and then a reader right next to it. So when the teacher logs into that, that becomes the kiosk for that class. A student couldn't go to another classroom and it's scanning them in there. That kiosk becomes that class at that time. So it's pretty secure that way. Kind of what it looks like. What we tried first, our very first attempt, was to send a QR code to every student every day. So the students would pull up their email, find the QR code, and then they would scan that in every day. Now on the phone, it was interesting. This shows a white picture. For some reason, all the pictures had a black background with a white QR code. Didn't work very well. So that was our first attempt. That's what we did first. Second, we started using these cards. You notice this is one of my workers, and some of you may recognize him, but I put my name on it. I didn't want to identify a kid in there. But you can identify me, that's fine. But that was our next attempt, is we printed off these cards for the students that has a barcode on it, identified the students, and then it's not their student number. It was just a unique number in PowerSchool. And what we're experimenting with now is more using the RFID readers. In the future, what they're talking about is building an app to actually do this, and I have a slide on that here in a second. But the app uses near field, and it's a lot more secure than some of these other protocols to actually do it. And kids are less likely to share their phone with a friend, to, hey, go clock me in. Is it secure? There is nothing that is 100% secure. And I can show you really quickly. If I don't scare you in this next thing, this scared me. Anybody seen the flipper? Anybody in the room seen this device? Okay, this thing actually captures radio signals and can replay them. So as I scroll down through here, oops, sorry. So I scroll down here. This thing can, oops. So it can capture RFID, so it can capture these cards. It can also replay signals to gates and all those types of things if they're a wireless signal. It has a bunch of different radio antennas in it. It can do the 125 kilohertz. It can do all of that. It also has Bluetooth built into it. It's got infrared built into it, so it can read like your TV codes and then replay those. A lot of different, like this is probably one of the hacking tools of today, and we have a ton of students in our schools that already have them. There's high school students that have them. They were hard to get. We tried to get one. It took us 6 months to get one. But it's one of those things where like there is really no way for us to totally secure that. So I'd recommend your wallet and maybe put your card in one of those sleeves that blocks signal. Not a bad idea, especially if you're running around one of our high schools, you know. But it's a scary device. But the thing is no matter what we do, students are going to try and find a way around it. It's in tech. That's like our main thing. People are always like, you should be able to filter 100%. Add more filters. It's like, you don't understand how filtering functions. Filtering is very difficult, and there's I don't know how many websites pop up every single day. So it's a very tenuous thing. It's the same thing with this. Will we do it as securely as possible? Yeah. And what we like about the solution with the Chromebook is they actually have to walk clear into the classroom. Get to the next one. They have to walk clear into the classroom or wherever the teacher puts that. So if they put it at the back of the room, students have to walk to the back of the room to scan in. They won't necessarily put it by the front door. They could. Tori really likes this, because he actually said what he likes about the auto attendants is he can let them do that, scan in, while he's interacting with them. And he goes, before I wasn't able really to do that, because I was back trying to do the attendance and everything else. He says, now I get to interact with the kids while they're doing that, and they sit down. He's had a lot of success with it and likes it. But we tested a bunch of devices. We tested tablets. We tested iPods. We tested all kinds of things. And really, what we came down to is a Chromebook. And we don't need to use new Chromebooks. We can use the Chromebooks that we're getting rid of. So the oldest ones work fine because it just needs to hit a website. It's very simple. So you can see it hits a URL, and then the first thing to do is the teacher comes in, scans in their code, and then that becomes their classroom. And then here's our scanning device. This is one that does both barcodes and QR codes. This one, I believe, this one here can do the RFID, and it also can do the near-field technology from the phones. This is about $20, so it's not terribly expensive. So the cost to implement in the classrooms isn't going to be a killer. And I'll talk a little bit more about cost here in just a minute. But this is the setup, and he really liked that. All the other devices he said he had trouble with, like I think the iPad, every time it fell asleep and it came back on, it disconnected the USB on the reader. So there's just all these little technical issues we dealt with. Chromebooks are solid. They work very well with wireless, and we're very well covered with wireless, which is good. Here's a little bit closer up shot of what it looks like. So the schools kind of have to decide what present time is, what tardy time looks like. When do you want to say they're tardy? You know, is it up to 10 minutes? You know, you want to go up to 15 minutes? Absent, when do you want to actually say the student's absent? If they walk in 40 minutes into class and scan in, are they considered absent? So that's some of the things that we have to look into. So here's the process. Teacher scans in 10 minutes before, does theirs. Students enter, they scan in one by one. It's very quick. And it can also, what do they call it? Like you can have a whole bunch of kids. It'll queue up in the background if there's a whole bunch of kids doing it really fast. So it's not a long process. Then they have to determine, are they tardy after 5 minutes? Are they absent after 20? And then at the present time, there's no procedure for leaving class. We don't have that. This is strictly attendance. It's not a hall. You know, I need a hall pass. It doesn't do that type of thing. Todd did send me a link that he found. It was e-hall pass, I think is what it was called. You know, a little bit expensive, but it does what we're doing. It's probably about the same cost as what we're doing on the attendance side. If there's change to the bell schedule, here's some of our concerns. If there's a change to the bell schedules, teachers have to take it manually. Once it's marked, the teacher cannot remove it. Unlike Power School, when they're in Power School and they're doing their attendance, they can change things on the fly. This doesn't allow them to do that. This is literally writing straight to the database, so it's not anything the teachers can fix. The attendance office can, but the teacher can't. Subs in the building, how do we have them scan in as the teacher? So this is something we're trying to work through right now. If a teacher doesn't sign in or forgets to sign in, the system will not register any attendance during that period for the teacher. And we're trying to make it so that it doesn't make call-outs when that's forgotten, and possibly some sort of a notification to the principal or wherever else it's not happening. What happens if a student forgets to bring it, you know? Which we all know is going to happen. I mean, in those codes, even like the QR codes and things, we have to actually go into Power School and put that code number in for each student. So it's a little bit intensive. There's also a tech support aspect, because this is going to have to be an immediate fix. You imagine if this gets messed up and we're calling parents and it's erroneous. So Caleb's, I put Caleb in here because I try and help Caleb. Now, let's talk turkey. I'm not sure if it's talking turkey or if the turkey's talking, but here's what we're talking about with money. We're looking at about $8 to $10 per student per year, and this is with this current vendor. There are others out there, so obviously we'll be doing our due diligence with Derek and his department to make sure we get comparisons. But we're using the old Chromebooks, which doesn't cost us anything, about $15 for all the readers. We're looking at about a yearly cost, about $55,000 a year. It's a rough cost. Tech support time, again, that's going to cause some work on my department. And these, you can ignore those bottom two. Those were more for me. Final thoughts. Currently, we're on a test server. Next week, we plan to actually put it live on the PowerSchool server. I'm glad we didn't put it live at first because we would have had a lot of bad calls to parents, especially when we made that change to the Gene, what was that day? It was a PD day we moved or we changed or something. And it caused an issue because then all the kids just got marked absent. We're like, ooh, you know. So we changed some things there. We'll be adding additional teachers to Provo High through the end of the year. We'll just keep adding teacher after teacher as we move through this. And like I said before, it doesn't include a hall pass option. And that would probably be around $45,000 a year for that if you wanted to have a feature like that. PowerSchool and attendance PowerSchool has no place to track hall pass information, just isn't in the database anywhere. Anyway, questions? That's where we are to this point. It's actually going better than I thought it would. I thought it would crash and burn, but it's actually, Eugene, I think done really well. Tori's been really happy with it. He likes the system. He's been getting a lot of good feedback from his students. You know, right now they like the barcode the best, but we haven't implemented either a fob or a card yet. It'd be nice if we could use their attendance card, but correct me if I'm wrong, Gene, don't these go out in like October, like an attendance or the kids' activity card? So it's kind of hard to use that for attendance because they won't get it right away.
Chimpu does theirs
You get it at
at the back to school day before school starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all have it.
Yeah.
If they choose to use it, they have to change the process of that for pictures.
Yeah. With pictures, and then we have to know that this picture ended up on this card with this number and it's tied to PowerSchool, you know, to them. So there's a lot of background work that has to go into that, but honestly going very well so far. Do you guys have any questions?
I'm funding this out of my budget, and I'm hoping that this is a success enough and an important enough priority that the next superintendent will continue to do that.
Chad, did I miss this part? Does it track tardies too and
Yep.
all that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. It'll track tardy. So a student walks in tardy. And this is the other thing that Tori really liked about it. Is normally when he's teaching, a student comes in tardy, he has to stop what he's doing, go to his computer, mark them tardy, and then come back to the teaching. And so that's some of the thing they like about that is it eliminates that. They can just go scan it at the back of the room and he can just continue to teach. One other cool thing we found is you could use the TV or the interactive panel in the front of the classroom and put the reader onto that and have the kids do it that way. It's a lot harder to cheat when you're, scanning here, your name pops up on the screen to say, to use another kid's. You can do that, but then the problem with that becomes the same thing. If you're teaching and then a student needs to come and do it, it's disruptive. So we really found right now that the Chromebook somewhere in the room where the teacher feels it's best is the best approach. And it's neat because you can do it anywhere. CAPS, he just logs in, it's a website. He goes to the website, he clocks in, and away we go. So it's worked really well so far.
Melanie, did you have a question?
Yeah, about you said at the very beginning, maybe possibly using an app or something to scan.
That's version 3, or that's a ways down the road.
Okay,
but he will work on that.
But what if kids don't have a phone?
So they would do.
Okay.
So it can read both.
This would just be on the teacher's app.
Yeah, well, no, it'd be on the students. So if a student wanted to use their phone, it'd be optional. Obviously, we can't force students to use their phones, but they could optionally use their phone with the app and clock in that way. Okay. If that makes sense. Yeah, Gina.
I'm assuming this is for secondary
Yes,
only?
right. I have had some really interesting comments about some elementary teachers wanting the same thing. So I don't know how far this will push or how far it'll go, but we're just in the pilot phase right now, so we'll see. But showing some promise. Anybody else?
Yeah, for me, a little bit of background. Is this, like, the problem this is solving is just helping teachers manage taking attendance and having a real-time tracker? Is that?
I'll handle that.
Go ahead, Keith. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks.
So the purpose of this really was to, a few years ago, I developed a list of chronic issues that I felt needed to continue to be addressed in the district. Absentee marking was one of them. And you saw the chronic absentee story in the Deseret News that I just forwarded to you a day or two ago. So this is an attempt to say, teachers, we know when you start your class, you've already got other things on your mind. So the only thing that you have to do is say, students, check in. And it moves the responsibility from the teachers to the students. And when you're in high school, that's a reasonable expectation for students. So that's the problem it's trying to solve, is to just kind of simplify things for teachers and get students to own their attendance.
Which, can I just make a comment on that? I love, because we have a couple high schoolers that have had one and have one now, and he's constantly telling me when he comes up with tardies or absences that it's not his fault, the teacher didn't do it right or whatever, and we're constantly having to have him go back and get things fixed, etc. And so if we can put the responsibility on him, it would be amazing. So just from a parent perspective, this sounds fabulous to me.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. I just curious, just making sure that I was on the same page of kind of what we were trying to solve here. So thank you.
So, and we wanted to thank Eugene. He's been by my side through that whole thing. We've been doing a lot of work on this, trying to make this happen. So we'll keep you posted as this moves along. And I want to thank the board. And Keith, this is being your last meeting. Good luck. You know, really appreciate all that you've done. So thank you.
In 3.5 months, I won't be taking attendance on myself.
Okay, thank you so much, Ted.
One other thing. So our 8-ball stopped working, so we 3D printed this one. It has some interesting responses like, what the hell, on here. Hell no is in there. A tentative yes. Do it. Yeah, this one's kind of, or are you stupid? That's my favorite one. You roll it and it's like, are you? Anyway, there you go. You want one? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to item 10, which is group email and public response, and that's actually my item. I tried to outline this on a document, so if everyone would bring that up real quick. If you haven't had a chance to read it, there's 2 quick things we're going to go over here. The first is a proposal for sending out emails to constituents after they've come and addressed the board at a board meeting. And the second one is procedures for responding to emails that are sent to the entire board. On the first one, the proposal for sending emails to constituents after they address the board, I feel like this one's pretty easy. Jennifer and I actually did this after our last board meeting where people came and spoke to us. And then I thought we ought to bring it up and make sure you guys are aware that we're doing this and get any comments or feedback on anything you might like to see different. But the basics of this is that this responsibility will belong to the vice president. And whoever comes and addresses the board will receive a follow-up email within a day or 2 that will thank them or acknowledge their comments, etc. The email will be on behalf of the entire board. It'll be from board leadership. And most of the time it should just be an acknowledgement and thanking them. If there is a specific problem or question that needs to be addressed, what we've decided would make the most sense is to copy the board member from that area on the response, and then at that point the board member from that area can possibly take over with that correspondence and working on that problem or whatnot. The only thing I think you may want to see different here is that the whole board is copied on all of the emails. Right now it was just the 2 of us. Does anybody have a desire to be copied on those? Want to see those as they go out? Do you care if it's just the 2 of us, or?
I would like to see them just so I know what the message is, but
personally, if there's a response back that we need to be aware of, that's all I care about.
I'd like to see them just so we know communication that's going on from the board, especially if it represents, because sometimes, you know, you'll think about that person and wonder if someone followed up, et cetera. So I think it's helpful.
Yeah.
I'm the same with Melanie. Like, it's fine if we get them, but I'm okay if we just get them if there's an issue afterward, because we heard them at the meeting.
So we've got 2 and 2, so the tiebreaker is going to be Terry. Terry, do you have a preference on do you want to see the communication that we initially send out, or do you only want to see it if they respond?
I would say initially respond.
What do you mean?
From the beginning,
You want to see it from the beginning. You want to see the original email that's sent out from Jennifer on behalf of the board that thanks
So like
them.
last time we had four or
Mhm.
5 commenters, and so if we copy all of you, you're gonna get 4 emails that I'll say thank you.
Thank you for coming to the board meeting. We appreciate your comments, etc. Okay. So I'll probably add that in. We'll CC everybody on that so everybody knows that that communication is going out. Okay, this second one is a little bit trickier. So on this one, I was at a loss of where to go or where to do. So what I did was I got all the email addresses of every board president in the state, and I just crowdsourced information. I said, tell me what you're doing and how you're handling this. And it turns out that I got the email address of the State Board of Education president and all sorts of people. So I was way more crowdsourcing than I thought I was doing, that I didn't realize I was doing. I got back quite a few responses, and I think there's a couple, I was hoping to see some themes emerge that would help us know where to go with this. And the theme that emerged is there is no theme. Everybody's doing something so very different. Very few boards actually have anything in policy or actually have any kind of written procedure. The State Board of Education did have that. Otherwise, it was a lot of, this is kind of traditionally what we've been doing type of responses. I've written down all the different ways everyone's done it here. And so at this point, it's a matter of preference of what we feel like we want to do. If I had to give a suggestion, I think the most common thing and what made the most sense to me personally was when we receive an email to the full board, it makes the most sense to me that the person who's over that area should be the one to respond. That's what I guess I like the best. There was a lot of like the board leadership just responds. But I kind of feel like as a board, we've done a pretty good job of trying to be open to our constituents and communicate with them well, et cetera. And I don't feel like I want to take that responsibility from anyone or from their area. And I don't want to answer all the emails, honestly.
The problem is knowing where that person
So
might
sometimes
live.
the problem is knowing where the person lives and whatnot. And when there's any question like that, it can default to board leadership. But if there's not a question, we know where the person is coming from. I like the idea of that board rep being the one who's responsible to answer. But we do want to keep a couple things in mind I put up here in our objectives. We want to have a unified board voice. We want to avoid giving our opinions. We want to avoid multiple or conflicting answers on the same email. And so I also liked, someone in here said that everyone is CC'd on everything. I mean, that means a lot of emails in our inboxes, but it is kind of nice to know when, someone's contacted Gina about, I don't know, whatever, XYZ, that conversation's happening and we are all kind of kept aware of what's going on, especially if something comes up in our area and they coordinate and we, I don't know. That's kind of what in my mind makes the most sense to me, but I'm open to anything. It doesn't have to be that. And so I guess what we need to do now is take suggestions and ideas and thoughts on what we see here or what we want to do, or we can literally do nothing and just keep doing what we've been doing, which is what we all do on our own. So.
Is there a form people can fill out and then it just goes to all of us?
On the
I don't think
website,
so.
there's not. As far as I know,
individually go to
They have to
Yeah.
go to individually.
And it no
So
longer
maybe we
lists our
should-
email for them to be able to just send an email with all of us on it. So I was wondering if we could talk about that.
Yeah, I would
and
like
if
to
we
change
like
that.
or not.
Council has council@provo.org, and maybe we need something like that. If you want to email the whole board, here's the email address you send that to.
So the question with that I have, if a person is choosing to email the whole board as opposed to just their representative, are they expecting a different, is that person's objective different, right? And like, what does our response look like as if someone's asking me specifically? I mean, in that moment, it may be easier for me to give an opinion and be clear, this is what I see on this given topic, as long as it's not something we've, previously voted on. Or if they're asking the whole board, does that make sense? And then maybe we won't know, and that's why if we have something that we know this is the procedure we follow, that's just what we do.
We can ask the city council what they do.
they weren't on my list. I should have asked them.
So at our new board member training, they talked about being careful when we respond to emails, first of all, that we are really clear if we do respond, like it's someone from my area or however you decide, that you're not speaking on behalf of the board in that response. The board only speaks when it takes a vote, right? So being really clear, I think, in your communication, first of all, that you can say, here's some thoughts I have just as an individual, but I'm not representing the school district or the board even. But the other thing was, poor Keith, they said, send, you should forward if it's a concern. Always copy your superintendent, but also refer them to the school, the principal, the superintendent, to actually answer the issue or to address the problem instead of getting involved in the weeds of trying to solve something, right? So I guess I just want to make sure you're not asking us to actually respond necessarily to the question even or the comment versus just acknowledge them.
Well, sometimes,
not necessarily,
going along with that, sometimes we might get something that can be solved better, that it can be solved better by sending it to Keith or Derek or something like that.
So there are some procedures in here that you probably read that there are some boards that do not answer emails. They're concerned about grammar requests, they're concerned about conflicting opinions, and they send it directly to the superintendent, and the superintendent takes care of all communication. And there are some that send it directly to communications. Communications crafts the response, the board approves it, and then it's sent out on behalf of the board. So there are some where they literally don't answer anything. I don't know. It's so.
Can I add? So I think, and there's generally two types of emails we get. So there's a specific issue that then we do point them back to other things, copy Keith. Then there's also, hey, I know that you're about to be talking about this topic at your next meeting, and we might get 10, 20 people emailing us about, like, I hope you vote this way or I hope you vote that way. And so in that case, we can have either all of us or one of us send a thank you for your email. We appreciate you weighing in on this issue. And we don't have to necessarily get into resolving anything or telling our opinions yet, but at least in my opinion, I like to at least say thank you for taking the time to reach out, right?
Gina?
I don't think, I didn't like the policies that I saw where a board member wasn't responding particularly because they're writing to us as a board. And if we stonewall them, to me, if I were a resident not on the board, I would feel like they're just ducking all of my questions. So I feel that at the very least it needs to be a board member responding. My favorite, although still I would want to tweak it, would be Jordan, which is what you talked about, which is the board member from the area responds. Nate and I made it a practice to respond basically to everybody's emails, which I thought was all right. And both Nate and I think we're good about saying this is our opinion. But I've had some really good conversations with people outside of my area that I treasure. Treasure is probably strong language. Value is much better. I don't have them under my pillow at night. But I feel like when you respond, whoever CCs everybody, we can decide who that person is. I am against prohibiting another board member from another area from responding with the caveat that they put on there that this is their opinion. I'm okay giving my opinion because they can fire me, and I would welcome that if they would fire me. But I think that the public values the ability to have conversations with us, whether it's via email or whatever. And I feel like if we block that, then we're asking for trouble, and we're appearing as if we're trying to hide something. And then the other thing is with the CCs, I'm against CCing everybody every time I get an email. There's a variety of reasons for that, but one of them is sometimes I get emails, and people can grammar them, that's fine. But I'll get emails from people, and if they knew that I was going to CC everybody, either they wouldn't email, or it's like they're trying to have a conversation with me because they've built a relationship with me. Does that make sense? I'm going to start getting emails to my personal email if we do that.
Yeah.
And this is more people who email the entire board, though, right? Like I think, isn't
Well,
that what you're saying?
we talked about
Well,
one.
it was, yes and no,
Oh.
I mean, they're both kind of in here.
Okay.
We are specifically talking about emails that come to the whole board, but in here, a few of them have addressed individual emails as well, that when they respond, they CC the whole board, so the whole board can be just made aware of what's going on, so.
I'm kind of on her, I am on her side with this, not kind of. I think it would be best though to either BCC Keith
Okay.
or the superintendent. Like if somebody emails me directly, it's that personal relationship that they may not be wanting to ask for the entire board's.
Yeah. Okay.
But letting the superintendent or the business administrator aware of the conversations we are having.
Okay.
And
So-
I don't know.
But would some people not email? I mean.
So I would say the vast majority of the emails I get, I do BCC and I forward them, and I respond and say, look, this is, you know, this isn't my purview. Here's my opinion on it. This really is the purview of the principal or of whoever. And then I'll tell them I am copying the superintendent on this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for the issues that are like about a specific issue in the district that needs to be taken care of, then I think CCing and stuff. There are other things where there's feelings and emotions and people's relationships. Those I'm not comfortable CCing, but I would say that those are rare. Those are rare that I would not CC or BC or forward it on to somebody.
I usually ask the person when they email me back, I say, do you mind if I share this with the rest of the board, or the superintendent, or Derek, or your principal, or your teacher? And then they always reply back, yes, you can share this with the rest of the board.
I think that's wise too. Okay, so, anybody else?
Can I add one more type of
Yes.
email to the mix?
Yes.
So every once in a while, we get an email that I assume comes to all of us, and it's like, we have this product that would be wonderful for your district. I would say in those kinds of emails, I've always just assumed the board president has handled it or the board leadership, but I never asked. So I guess if we know someone's going to take care of it, or hey, I think this goes to so-and-so's department. Do I, as a regular board member, forward that on to so-and-so's department? Or
stuff.
Do I assume that Rebecca or myself are going to do it? Like, who's going to do anything with that?
If I ever do anything with those, I just forward them to the person who I think would.
Yeah.
Would
Well, like
be
Doug doesn't
interested.
need 7 of us forwarding him
Right.
the same email, right?
So if it's a product or a sales email, you want it to, you're saying board president on that one?
I think so. Unless
Awesome.
you want to do it to the vice president, or we pick
It's
someone.
like when I would do it before, like when I get those, like, I'm not saying that I would forward every one of them. A lot of them were
Yeah, some of
round
them.
filed and deleted. But I would usually just say FYI and just forward it to Keith.
Yeah, okay, that's what
And
I've
then
done
he
in the
can
past
take
year.
care of it.
Okay, so let me just go, so it sounds like what we mostly agree on, or what I think we agree on, is that if someone emails the whole board, this is the number 4 bullet point, that the board member representing that area is responsible for a response, right? If the area is not defined, do you want it to fall by default to board leadership? Okay. If there's
ask them what area
we could,
what school their kids
okay, that's something we could absolutely do, is just respond and say, tell me what area you're from so we can get this to the right person, and then, okay, get it to the right person, okay? If there's a product type email, that's gonna default to the board president, and then if there's just an email where they are, well, I guess, do we need to differentiate between the ones where they're just giving opinions and just letting us know how they want us to vote versus there's an issue to solve, or same thing, it goes to the person from the area, right?
And going along with what these two have said, that if there's something that we feel like needs to be shared with the whole board, asking if
Ask
their
him if
permission,
that's okay.
can I share this with the whole board?
Okay.
Can I ask a question then? I mean, if an email comes into the entire board and it's not from your area, but you would like to respond, would you reach out, say, to the person in that area and say, do you mind, like, what's the process for that? Because I do think there might be a time where more than one person may want to respond to that person,
Yes.
and I don't know.
In my opinion, I think it's fine for, if you want to respond, but I think maybe we should let the person from the area respond first. How about that? Does that sound, if it's your area, you get first dibs, I guess, if you want to say, and once your response is out, then you can someone else can respond. Because
How do we know whose area it is?
Say
like,
that again?
how do we, like, is there gonna be an email, like, this just seems like it's making more work, cause like, I'm not gonna know, if they say, this is my address, I'm not gonna know, if it's on the east side, I'm not gonna know whose it is, so then I don't know, I know where you live now, that's about the only one, and maybe Melanie, and even that, I still wouldn't know, but, so how do we know who it is, and how do we, like, do we then email them and say, when you're done emailing them, can you email me so that I can email them back? Like, I feel like we're starting to do this.
So that would be where we would email and say, where are you from, and let us know your area so we can get this to the right person.
So they get to the right person, but then if I want to respond and I'm out of the area, I guess is my concern. And if I need to wait for them, I actually don't have a problem waiting for someone to respond. I guess it depends on how long it takes them to
I guess in this case, when we figure out whose it is, we can send an email within, like, we don't have to reply directly to that person within that email. We can reply to just us and say, this is Melanie's, this is Terry's. Like, that's fine. Right? Just to do that. Does that work?
Yep.
Really, is it a big deal if another board member responds before the person in that area? I think, in my mind, the objective of this is that at least people get a response. Like, an email sent, at least one person's responding, and if more respond, great. That is kind of
the objective here is to put some kind of process in place so that every time we get an email, we all go, who's going to do this? What are we doing?
Right.
That's it.
So
That's
I think if there's a little bit more, that's probably fine, but the process, at least we know once we figure out the person from the area will respond, but anyone else can, within their own time frame, before or after. That's just what I'm thinking.
Maybe if we put at the beginning of the email, your board member, the board member from your area will either has responded or will respond, or something like that, and then I just feel like it's going to get a little bit too much like, Melanie, have you emailed them back? No, not yet, you haven't had time, but I have a response I'm ready to send.
One of us might be out of town when something comes
right.
up, or
but I think I'm feeling kind of what some of you said, like, as long as somebody responds, I'm okay with that. But something I haven't always done is even if they write all of us, sometimes I just only reply individually to them. And so I'm hearing the value of at least hitting CC so that people know, oh, someone responded to that person. And then if you know it's your person, then you can just make sure when you write back, I am your board rep or something like that, right? Even if someone else already responded, you could still reply to them.
Sorry, I have lots to say on this because I before the baby came, I responded to every email. I'm back to responding to every email. But when we CC everybody, it feels like I don't even know, it feels bigger than if it's just a one-on-one response. I only hit CC everyone if I felt like it was really important or I was angry. But because I don't know, when we CC everyone, to me, then that but I see your point, Jennifer. I see your point. See, Nate and I would just email each other. Did you get back to this person? Because this person, needs a response. But I feel like when you CC everyone, it becomes a bigger thing.
And then
than
everyone feels like they have to jump in.
Yeah, and then everybody's in on the conversation, and so it's like. Or what we could do is, if I respond and it's Lisa's area, I'll just shoot her an email that says, hey. Here's my response to that person, and then she can see maybe what I wrote. Or I'll just say I responded to that person, just FYI, I don't know. But I feel like we're making more work for ourselves than we need to.
We're getting nowhere.
Right, well, this is why this has come up.
And I think this is another reason why there's not really a definitive answer across the state of how everybody does it either.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
I think it's fine to say, okay, if an email comes to all the board, we default to if it's not, we clarify the area that person's from, and then we know that at least it's the responsibility of the person to get an email out. Anyone else wants to weigh in or even just say, I acknowledge your email, can do that, and it doesn't have to be before or after the person in that area. That way, we're not adding extra communication about when someone sends something, but the person in the area just knows that, in a day or 2 days, I need to make sure I respond to this person, or respond saying, we got your email, I got your email, I can get back to you in a day or something.
I actually think 4 works with what she said. So the email's the whole board, the board member representing that area is responsible for a response, or it defaults to you guys if you can't figure it out. And then anyone can respond back. if they would like, I think.
Yeah. And I think you don't have to CC everyone if you want to make it personal. Like, this is my opinion. I'm responding to your email. And that's fine. That's my opinion.
Okay. Is this something we feel like we want to add to our board handbook to make it officially defined?
I think it would be good for incoming board members to know what we do. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know that needs to be an official board policy,
Yeah,
but I
that's
think
fine.
in the
I think,
handbook.
I think when I think you and I are on board handbook revisions.
Okay.
I think it's something that we could look at and adding. Like, I think let's try it this way for the next little while.
See what happens.
See what happens.
Okay.
And
I
then
do
we
have
can-
one question. I mean, the objective listed here is to have a unified board voice to avoid opinions and to avoid multiple or conflicting
Those were, okay,
answers.
those
So
were
I'm just curious
my
about that.
objectives that I put out there. And the reason I put those in there is just because I'm hearing from so many people, you want to be very careful. You have to be very careful because of open meeting laws and because of grandma requests and all these different things. You have to be very careful. And so some of them have taken it to the extreme where we just don't respond, right? And so I think maybe and like Gina said, I agree with you. I don't want to stonewall people. So I feel like we can still answer, but I will just remind everyone and give everyone a caution to please be careful. If you're giving an opinion, which is totally your right, make sure you make it very clear that you're giving an opinion. And on the same note, besides that, if it's something that it's not our responsibility, if this person has not gone up the correct chain of command, if they're just coming directly to us with a problem when we haven't talked to the principal or we haven't talked to the director or whatever, to please make sure that instead of trying to solve the problem, make sure it goes to the correct chain of command first, right? As long as we remember those things and are careful about those things, I think those objectives don't necessarily have to. Those were my personal thoughts.
How many grammar requests do we get for our email?
I don't know.
Not common,
Not common.
Usually just if there's something that
but
comes
it's
up.
always there lurking as a.
Rebecca, one more thing. So about like the open meeting laws, I think that's also another reason maybe not to always, if we get a board email, if we CC everyone, I mean, then we're all, like that idea of then we all are having this conversation with this one constituent.
Right.
And we're all involved, could be entering into, violation of that, where if we aren't always CCing everyone, if we're sharing something, we're staying clear of that. Does that make sense?
I agree. Terry had a really good idea, so I'm going to nominate Terry because we were talking about this on the way up to the meeting, and there were only two of us in the car, so we were not violating any open public meeting law. But she said, well, maybe we should come up, and we don't have to use it, but maybe have a standard response, like to put at the beginning, like this is my opinion or whatever, and we don't have to use it, but it might be helpful to have it in the board handbook or something so that new board members will have something that they can just copy.
Yeah.
Yes,
So I think
yes,
Terry
yes.
should have to do that.
Okay.
Terry, you want to take that assignment? Actually, that's a great idea. I mean, to come up with some kind of
All right.
written statement that we can include if we want.
Okay.
Okay, cool. We're so far behind everybody.
Can I-
Oh yeah, go ahead, Jennifer.
Back to something we mentioned earlier. Chad, I know I asked you a long time ago. I don't
Canned
remember the response, but
that's what
there
they're
you go.
called.
Would it be possible to create an email address like board@provo.edu that people could, then it automatically goes to everybody?
We could do that. There's a little bit of concern on just spammers and, like miscreants getting that information, but we could. And if we did that, we'd do it in a picture form so that it can't just be.
Similar to like if somebody wants to email, our email's not directly on there. They have to go.
Yeah, right now they click on it, it goes to a form, and then that form then sends you the email. That way they don't have your actual email address. We did that district-wide just to prevent people from just go to our websites, grab our email addresses, and send spam, and try and get us that way. Because that's how all of the recent attacks and things, even in Alpine, that's how they begin. And they definitely target boards because that's, and the superintendent, Derek, and people like that. You guys are absolutely targeted. So I mean that's why we have it that way. But I'm certainly, we'd be open to it. Keith and I discussed if you guys want to go through some sort of training, like go through some training on how to recognize it and that kind of thing. Then we put them on there. But we still would do it in a picture format. Wouldn't do it as text because
they'll scrape that out and just automatically send them out.
I would like some, I've noticed since our actual email addresses are not on anymore, we do get emails that it looks like it comes just to me, but I'm like, I think they probably emailed the whole board, and I like to know if it was to just me or not. So if I can tell, oh, this came to board at Provo or whoever, I think that would help.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to full day kindergarten update.
So actually, I'm going to ask for Jason to step forward. This is more of a discussion about staffing at the moment. We think we have the room situation pretty much in place, but I'm just going to give you a brief update as to what we're thinking as council about where we go next.
Good morning, board. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss the full day kindergarten. We had actually visited a lot of the schools prior to the legislation having gone through to discuss with them their FTE settlement or FTE numbers for this next year. But with that, Derek's team had already worked on planning on full day assignments, and so the way they collected the FTE from this year, many of the classes were already in a full day setting. We did a lot of work last year. I want to make sure we give Doug and his team and Alex and his team a lot of credit on what they did last year to make sure there was full day K in each of the schools as an option. This year, we would like to be able to move to all sessions being full day, but as Keith mentioned, some of that is about staffing and whether or not we can find the number of teachers who are qualified to be able to teach that. Right now, we're not far off from having enough in all settings to be able to offer full day K for every option. And parents who would like to opt into a half day option, they would join one of the full day classes and be able to leave at midday. And so that would be a part of having all the classes at the school being able to be that all day setting. Right now, I believe we're only about two schools short, two assignments short on having people be willing to move from half day to full day that are current in their contract to then be able to hire for those two additional assignments. So we're really close on being able to just have everybody in place for the next year to be in an all-day setting. But are there any questions about kind of where we're headed with this?
Can you just clarify, are you saying all of our schools will have all kindergarten full day, or you just mean out of the ones who want? Are there some schools that will still do a half day class?
Yeah, what we're wanting to do is move to where all schools have all day for every session. But if a parent wants to opt for half day, they would be able to have their student not attend for that time frame. But yeah, we would like to go all day, all sessions.
So for the classes where someone's opting out half day, I would just ask that you make sure your core curriculum is offered in one. I know that's tricky to do because part of the benefit, from what I understand, is around the timing and the spacing of some of that, but
Yeah, we do have actually a good model of that already in place. And what we do is, as you mentioned, we offer the core in the morning, and then in the afternoon we do a lot of revisiting the things that have already been taught. So it's reinforcement of things that students have already had the opportunity to learn at that point. And again, kindergarten's wonderful. I remember as an elementary principal that we would get a lot of students who would come in, and as we would do the testing, their vocabulary was short of where we would hope they would come in at. And at the time, when I was a principal, that was the grouping of students we would actually invite to come to All Day K, because we would want to help them be able to have not only their vocabulary, but other skills that maybe they just aren't getting currently in the setting at home because of English not being the first language at home, a lot of different reasons. But again, I think this is a real benefit to the community. I think it's a benefit to our students to be able to offer full day in all of our settings. And we just wanted to update you on that's our goal. That's what we'd like to be able to do. We do still have some hiring to do with that, but we wanted to just make sure you were aware where we were going.
Go ahead, Manila.
Capital, like, do we have enough
space?
The schools, I know we have one issue, I'm worried I'm opening up a 30-minute conversation, but in general, do we have enough rooms?
Yeah, we actually have resolved all spaces. So every school has it resolved. We talked about a specific school in the past. They're able to move things around internally and make it work. So yeah, we have the space provided for the number of sessions that we've allotted. A lot of this comes down to, and Derek's team has done a lot of work on this, you take like a 5-year trend of kindergarten enrollment and generate the FTE for the next year, thinking that's probably the number that's going to come. And so we'll watch as students register for this next year, and that'll generate the number of sessions. So if there's 80 kids, that's probably 3 sessions of kindergarten. A little bit more, it would push us up to a 4th. But again, there's a certain ratio to that as to how many sessions are offered at the school based on the number of students who have come in the past. And that's usually, that trend data really helps us to kind of be really close to where the student enrollment is for the coming year.
Okay, my question maybe is Derek. I know that there's some funding, we got new funding from the legislature this year, but is it all coming from the state legislature now as a WPU, or is it coming from different funds, like some of it was Title I before?
Yep, so with the new way the all-day kindergarten is being ran, is they lumped in those other pots of money, the OEK, right, those kinds of things, and said, hey, look, we're funding all-day kindergarten as kind of this one line item. It's not the WPU, it's still going to be essential one line item, but it's all of that kindergarten funding and OEK funding for essentially these FTEs. So that's why we funded everything as if all students are choosing to come here, or assuming that all students will make that decision. So because that way they get the FTEs if they show up, because we will still get that funding. That it's essentially the equivalent of a full WPU.
Okay.
Did the state legislature clarify that in appropriations? Because I've read this bill twice and it's very confusing as to if we're getting a 1 FTE or still getting 0.55.
So if they're
it's
still
HB 477 if you guys
if
want to
they're
look
still
it up.
half day, we will still get the 0.55. If they go full day, it's the 0.1, but it's going to come through that kindergarten OEK collapsed funding.
Okay.
So like we have to report to them, right, and tell them how many kids went full day and how many went half, and then they'll pay us accordingly?
Correct.
Okay.
One other item to, I apologize.
It goes back more with about class sizes. So we're hiring based on this year's, because we don't know what our enrollment for kindergarten is until closer to the fall. Which is one of the difficult parts.
That's why we use that funding ratio. So we won't know all the registration until, honestly, in August itself, all the way up to Labor Day. There's a lot of still enrollment going on. That's why we use the projections of where were they last year as a school. And this year, those projections came in really well. We use a 5-year average to do those projections. And so that's what we're projecting off of for this fall. So we're saying, for instance, just an example, Amelia Earhart has 68 students projected to be in their kindergarten this next year. They had 64 this year. They are getting 2.5 FTE for kindergarten. If they want to, on that 3rd session, having it go full,
I spoke to Ryan.
Right, and of course, I think most people will want to be full. So to get the ability to move up to a full because of the ratio of how many students that would be in a class, because let's say 68 divided in 2, that's 34 students in each class. That's too many for kinder. But it doesn't quite meet the ratio to go up to a 3rd full teacher. So what Ryan would do is potentially have classes in the upper grade be a little bit bigger, and he would take some of the FTE down to his kinder. Or he also has optional budgets like TSSA, trust lands, class size reduction that can be used to then be applied to that. And that was exactly what I was going to say as you started. So I appreciate it.
So what are we anticipating like an average kindergarten size to be?
So we project currently off of 27 and a half, but again, a lot of times because schools have so much optional money to them, like for example, and this is going back some time, when I was an elementary principal, I would get in class size reduction alone around $180,000 for the year. And I could use that money to then reduce class size just as it's described. So for example, like Ryan, if I was getting 2.5 from the school district and I needed a third, and it was going to bring my class size way down because again, if I only have 68 students and now I'm dividing it by 3, you know, I'm sitting now at just over 20 in each class. And so, but I would go ahead and use that money to make that happen within my class. And we have, as an ongoing track record, this is something we discuss with PEA all the time, we have some of the lowest class sizes in the entire state because of this option to kind of use this money to help us lower class sizes even beyond what we just give as a district basically on the 099, the basic allocation.
When is kindergarten registration start?
We wanted to ask this question and get it clarified, and thank you for making it part of the agenda, because March is when this begins. And so we're going right now and changing the wording in the application so we identify and give people the notice you can choose full day kindergarten. So it begins now. But we'll, as Jason mentioned, run all the way through and into the start of the school year.
I have a question. Last night at our regional meeting, they were talking about full day kindergarten, and they were talking about the schools that were like posting their job applications as the session was winding up to try to get to those kindergarten teachers first. I guess I just want to know, like, if we have a sense of what we need to add in terms of hiring, like,
yeah,
how
luckily,
are we doing to get out there?
Luckily, again, right now we really only had 2 positions in the entire district that we needed to be able to fill because we'd had prior conversations with people who were in the half-day setting who are willing to say they'll go full-time. So we don't have a lot, but again, that's current. It always makes me a little nervous when everybody else is looking for kindergarten teachers that they're not trying to poach ours also, you know. So that is the current setting we're in, and we want to work to find those 2. But that's the work that the principals and I will be doing to try to help them have everybody in place for the fall.
Okay. Any further questions from the board? Okay. We're going to do something a little bit different than what's on the agenda for just a minute. We're going to take lunch is here, and so what we're going to do is we're going to take a 10-minute break to get our food. Then we're going to come back and we're going to discuss item number 12 while we're eating at the beginning of our lunch, and then we'll adjourn that first part of the meeting and then finish our lunchtime. But I'm going to try and double up just a little bit so we can try and catch up. So if everyone will take a quick 10 minutes, grab your food so we can get started on eating, and then we'll come back and discuss our last item, number 12.
got to
Okay.
implement something
I
like
didn't bring
this,
any
you know?
Dr. Pepper today, and I should have.
I think it is good to put it, and that's something high schoolers can be responsible, right? Like-
Okay, everybody, we're going to finish our last item on the morning part of our study session. So we're going to start talking about the student board member policy and procedure. And I guess we're going to go ahead and give the time to Gina, right? Keith,
Yep.
did you want to start? Okay. Okay, Keith, Gina.
All right, first of all, I want to thank Keith for working on this policy, as well as Todd, who I've basically thrown all the work to. I still think that this will be a valuable experience, not only for the students, but for us as a board to get that feedback from the students. I do wonder sometimes if I have jumped into the deep end of the pool before I've had swimming lessons. So, but I'm still committed to this. And so Keith sent, I believe he sent it to me and maybe Todd. We talked about it. Talked about a few things. He made some changes, brought it back to policy committee at the district level, got some feedback, made those changes as well, which you guys, I sent you those. You should see those in underline of some of the changes that we made. We're very open to feedback. And we know that it will have more iterations before it's finalized. The reason we're doing this here is because we're kind of on a tight schedule. If we want to give the students a few weeks to be able to fill out their applications and get them in, we need to get this done pretty quickly, and we won't have a lot of time at the board meeting on the 21st. So I appreciate our leadership allowing us to do this, and I appreciate you guys giving up a little bit of your lunch time to do this. And so I sent it to you. I've talked to a couple of you in passing. I had one board member give me feedback via email, and so I kind of want to start there, if that's okay. It was Board President Rebecca Nielsen. I forgot your last name for a second. It's President Rebecca. And some of these I think we don't need to take the time in here to go over, but maybe I forwarded that to you, Keith. That first number talks about, do we need, after having studied and listened, I think that stuff we can take care of in policy, right? Like if we need to keep that first little bit in there. I don't know if it needs to be a conversation here, unless you would like to say why you include that in policy.
It was just to give background, that was all. But a lot of the policies that I've written do include a little bit of that background information. Over time, it kind of times out, so when revisions happen, it could be removed at that time, or we can take it out right now.
Does anyone have a strong feeling about that? So basically what she said was the first part, after having studied and listened to presentations from secondary school students in the district, the board has expressed an interest. She feels like maybe that could be taken out. If there's no strong opinions either way, then I'll just, policy committee will just take a look at it and make a decision.
I had the same thought. I don't necessarily feel strongly either way, but I thought, well, I don't know that we need that part in there, but.
Okay. If we just
nod to the work the students did though, which
right.
is good.
My one thought on it was it maybe is better in procedure, just because it doesn't necessarily pertain to the policy itself, but it's good to have context and background, absolutely. Maybe in the procedure makes more sense to me. But again, it's also kind of like Jennifer, it's not that big of a deal either way.
Okay. Her next item was under the eligibility section on the procedure. Talks about what if a student has poor grades. So we have a procedure for what if a student has poor grades, but it doesn't have what happens if a student is continually on probation. Do we remove them from the position? If so, under what circumstances? And if we remove a rep, will they be replaced? And what would the process be? And so, Keith, I wanted to get your input on that. If you feel like what you have written or what the policy says now kind of covers that, or if you think we should add something.
Yeah, I think that's a good catch. I think we could definitely put in something there that addresses that question. My recommendation would be for onboarding purposes and those kinds of things, maybe you don't look at replacing the person. It will be really hard to bring them up to speed halfway through the year or partway through the year. And that's just my recommendation, but I'll do I'll write in this what the board wants written in it.
My question about that is, what are the athletic directors doing with the sports teams? Maybe we should have the same procedures that they do?
Oh, you
Yep.
mean like
Oh, you're talking academic qualifications.
Yeah, you have to have a certain GPA to be able to play football.
Right,
You have to have certain things. What are those procedures? It should just be the same.
I think Todd did that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
here.
we have those same things in place. I think Rebecca's question was, they have to have those procedures, I mean, they have to have those those qualifications when they apply, but what happens if they fall beneath those chronically once they're in? I don't know that would happen because of the students who would be applying.
Technically apply.
However,
You never know.
it's so I do think that, so maybe what we could do is, well, I tend to agree that if we remove someone, I don't think we should try to replace them mid-year. I feel like we're doing it now in mid-year. Yes, Todd?
If I may add, part of the policy is that these students that are selected would be included in the school's student government class. That class has criteria that they must meet academically, much along the same lines we've been talking about. They also have a process that they go through for if a student falls below that mark, whether or not they're placed on probation, and at what point are they then removed. It may be useful for the board to mirror that same policy.
I think that's a good idea.
Are the high schools the same in their policy for that?
I'm almost certain they're very similar, if not identical.
So is everybody okay if for this section here, Rebecca specifically, because this was your feedback, if we mirror the student government policy on this?
Yeah, I'm
Is everybody okay
perfectly
with that?
fine with that.
Okay, perfect. The next one is, and she wanted to make very clear that she's still very supportive of student reps, but what if, basically, this is my interpretation, Rebecca, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what if we decide that it's not working, or it's whatever, for whatever reason we decide that we don't want to continue it? Does this policy then box us in where we have to have a student rep, or is this something that we could discontinue if we need it? And having said that, all you students who are listening, because I emailed them to let them know we'd be talking about this, we are not planning on doing this. We just need to have something in place. And it was my understanding, Keith, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think anything in the policy says we have to continue this.
Correct.
Okay.
In fact, it just gets to the nature of board policies. Board policies are potentially dynamic. They can always be changing. And if the board decides that this is an important enough topic to raise at a future time and wants to suspend this policy, the board by vote can do that.
Okay, so we don't need to necessarily have like an out in the policy. We just need to.
It's just a
It
standard
would just be
practice.
something that if we just decide we don't want to, we just suspend the policy.
Yep.
Okay.
But as long as the policy's in place, the policy says we will have something, so we'd have to come to the policy.
You'd have
And
to
we'd have to
remove the
remove the
policy.
policy.
Yeah.
So I guess the answer to your question would be, removing the policy would be the way that we remove the program.
Okay.
There's a typo one in number 4,
I'll
and
get
then
that.
this is the last one is do we want student reps giving a 3-minute report at every board meeting? And I consulted with Todd really briefly, and my own opinion is we as board members don't give a board report every month, and so I don't think we should be doing it monthly for them. I think it would actually be more meaningful if they did it once a term, once a quarter,
like
whatever.
quarter term.
Once a quarter or term, and Todd and I can determine that as we're going through and figuring some things out with Keith's help. We can figure that out. But I tend to agree that it's a little bit of overkill to have them do it once a month. Unless there's something specific that we would like from them, we can give them a heads up and have them come prepared to give their opinion. But I do think. Or if they want to bring something to us, then they could bring it to either, and we can determine that process. But I think they'd probably bring it to Todd and I, and then Todd and I would pass it on to the superintendent and board leadership to have that, if we think it's something, we'd vet it. And then we'd send them to you guys if we thought it needed to be on the agenda, and then you guys could make that final decision.
Absolutely. I think it's, in my mind, it's just like our board report, right? We're doing it once every 7 months, right? So to have them do it all. And that does not include the other things we all have stuff on the agenda today we're talking about, right? So just the basic board report is what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Well, the way I read it is we'd get a monthly one, but it would alternate, so each student was doing it every other month. And I actually kind of like that. I want to hear what's happening in the schools and what they're hearing and
that's
things
why
like
I
that.
write it. That's why I wrote it that way, because I felt that the board has gone to the effort to want to bring student voice to the board. You're going to want to hear something. A 3-minute report on an alternating basis, not 2 of them, but 1 every month, should be manageable.
We can say
but
up
again,
to
I'll
3
write
minutes.
what you want.
It doesn't have to be 3 minutes.
How many times have we had a 3-minute presentation that stuck to 3 minutes is my question.
It's not a presentation, it's a report.
Right. How many times have we
Right.
had a 3-minute report that stuck to 3 minutes?
Hey.
You were 3
Usually
minutes.
the
Before
super-
Nate
Usually
and
the
before
superintendent's report.
So, no, so I'm actually not opposed if we want to have them do it. How about if we met in the middle and had them do a written report to us? Like they took turns doing a written report and then we'd get a report of what's happening with the students. And then if we determine that it's something that needs to be, maybe that's how we determine if we need a verbal report. Is they'll write up something, they can give their thoughts, it'll be their written report. They can have 2 times during the year maybe that they each get to do, like it's a scheduled verbal report, and then they give us a written report, which we can then turn into a verbal report if we need.
I like that. But you don't, apparently.
Well, no, I just had another thought. If we each are doing our board member reports once every 7 months, we're like, these are all the things we need to talk about. If they are doing it every other month, then hopefully it can be, and this time I'm going to talk about this one thing. And in 2 months, when it's my turn again, I'll talk about this other thing, and I can stick to the 3 minutes. I don't know. I would still like to hear from him at a board meeting, but
Okay. What are other thoughts? I'm fine either way. I am also thinking we always go over.
We can never keep,
We
always
can't.
pack
But
our board meetings.
I am open to it. So what are thoughts from everybody?
After Susie's presentation, I was like, do they really want to do a written report? And that's going to sound like homework. Maybe they want to do a video. Or maybe they want to do something.
And we can limit the video to 3 minutes.
You could limit the video to 3 minutes. I will say also, I actually was a high school school board representative who it was an awesome experience for me. So we did get just like a 2-minute presentation that we could do, but
Yes, they could absolutely submit a video.
this part's also in procedure, so we can pick something. And in 2 months, if we're like, let's change it, that's easy to change because it's
Yep.
not in the policy.
So should we just leave it as it is and then leave the 3-minute report in there? And then if we decide once we get, because Todd and I were just talking about we need to have training put together. Once we're in talks with the students, maybe they'll have the fabulous idea. That's why we have them, right? They have ideas we don't have.
Right.
Then we can change it. Keith, does that sound?
I think that's very reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else have input?
Yeah, just, I mean, as you're talking with the students, I'm thinking about anything that's on our agenda, like, ahead of time, could we ask for specific input, right, on these, I mean, like, that could be part of that presentation for that meeting is specific to an agenda item where we want, what's your perspective on Chromebooks? What, you know what I mean, or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then, and if any of the board members would like specific student feedback on any issue, they're welcome to speak with them or email them and have them add that to whatever their report is, or
Okay,
be
yeah.
part of the conversation like Meg just talked about.
One thing to think about is where would you like that report on the agenda? Would it be at the end when we do the board member reports?
That makes
That's
the
what
most
I was
sense to me.
thinking.
That would be where I would naturally put it, but you know, what Megan just raised was if there's something that they want to talk about in advance of a vote.
Right, be more integrated in our meeting, right,
Yeah.
than as
Study
opposed,
session.
yeah, in a study session, which would be another opportunity for them to hone that
But I
skill.
think that would be. Wouldn't that just come through the discussion?
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
They could speak up.
They
during
could just
the
participate in
discussion.
the
But they
discussion,
could
right?
also be part of, like, if there's something that they really want to bring up, just like we want to have something put on the agenda, they could approach board leadership.
That's true.
Yeah,
Okay.
true.
So should we just leave it, so we decided to leave it as is, correct? And then if we feel like we need to change it, we can make that change later.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
just direct counsel and we'll work on some type of revision and we'll try that one out.
Okay?
Yeah.
Sounds good, thank you. All right, that's the end of Rebecca's. What other feedback did you guys have that we should, yes, Meg?
This is like technicality, and everyone might not agree. On 282, the student's officer's moral character is important. I feel uncomfortable equating moral character to tardiness and absences. So I would just maybe citizenship. I don't even know if that's the best word. I just don't And even if the kids that may be applying, absentee is not a concern for them, but I don't know.
So the original language, I had included the word truant or
Uh-huh.
truancy, and then I removed it after we talked about it in policy committee. And then after having heard what Doug was talking about today, I think you could put truancy back in there and clean it all up.
Sure, okay. So yeah, I don't have a problem with, they need to have good attendance, but
So what if we maybe separate, number 2 becomes 2 and 3, and one of them is about the attendance and one is about the moral character and disciplinary? Is that what you're saying? Because right now it does
Sure.
sound like moral
Right.
character, absences, right?
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Or
Okay.
just move absences to the second half of that.
Are we just using moral character because it was part of the survey?
It was the language that they used in their presentation.
Oh, the students
And I
used
couldn't
it.
come up with a decent synonym for it, so I just kind of defaulted to it.
Sure, and I have the same. Yeah, I guess I just think that moral character for kids, like, just don't want to negatively label that with maybe things that are out of their control, that don't really contribute to their moral standing in relation to their other students, and they're still learning and figuring things out.
So I think if you do what you said and put truant back in, or chronic absences, or whatever term we want to use, would that clean that up? I think.
I guess, I don't
No.
even know if
I don't
we need
think
to
it
put
does.
moral character in there. We can line with the things we're asking.
Yeah, I
Disciplinary
could just remove that.
consequences,
It's kind of a
absences, right?
loaded term.
What if
Sure,
you just
yeah.
said citizenship?
Yeah, that's what I was
Like,
kind of.
the student officer's citizenship is important, and then
It is part of being like an engaged citizen, to be present,
Yeah,
to not be breaking rules, et
Yeah.
cetera, without maybe overreaching with that little description.
Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking about,
yes,
Meg?
yeah, and that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Okay, thank you, Meg, good feedback. What else do we have? I know that Jennifer had a few things she told me about. I think Melanie mentioned she might have a couple of things.
I was just
also might
wondering,
have been-
should we make the application digital?
I'm not the right person to ask. How would we do that?
I don't know.
Well, is that something we should be looking at for next time? Like,
Yeah.
we have so much on here, but I do think it should be available digitally with the time crunch that we're in. Let's look at that. If we can make it happen, we'll make it happen. If not, we
Yeah.
can implement it for the following school year. Is that okay?
And Jacob at Independence was wondering how can Independence students apply, and how will they know about this, and they
Todd,
deserve to have that opportunity as well.
well, we have consulted with him, and so did the students consulted with him. So I think that's just maybe a messaging thing that Todd can talk to him about.
Yes, we'll work out a communication plan as well as a marketing plan.
And if it makes him feel any better, if you talk to him, we don't have a marketing plan for either of the other schools either, so they're all on equal footing. Okay, so digital application, all right. Melanie, did you say you had?
Most of mine were.
Sorry, I think that's a good point, though. I think in terms of the application process, let's see, where is it? Application and selection, I think we probably should have some type of commitment here. Sorry to do this to you, Caleb, but to have the communications department get something out to students at a certain time, probably end of February every year, so that we can generate the applications that I think you're hoping you will get.
Can I
I agree.
add another thing? I don't know where this is on the procedure or the policy, but it's something I am thinking of now that we're talking about independence, and I know I read this in here. It says something about the students' board reps need to be clear that they need to do their best to represent independence as well as all students, and it makes it sound like we're not having reps from independence. So maybe we need to change that, wherever that is in here, to just, they need to be willing to represent all students regardless of where they come from in the district.
I thought I'd caught that and removed it, but apparently I didn't.
What, was it removed? I don't know. I just remember reading it,
So
and I
it's in
don't know, like I said, I don't know.
64.
It's line 64?
Line 646.
646.
Yeah.
There it is, right. So if we take out, just make every effort to represent all students throughout the district, like regardless. I don't know if we need to say regardless from where you come from or whatever, but.
That one's done.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
Wow, that was efficient, Keith. I don't know if we've ever been that efficient before.
Don't get used to that.
Good job. Jennifer?
A lot of mine were just like, oh, move this to a different section or something like that.
Okay.
So I'll just pass it off to Keith.
Awesome. Lisa?
I actually already looked through it, and I think it's, with what people have said, I think it's great.
Awesome. Meg, did we get all of yours? And Terry? Okay, so we will take this, Keith will take this feedback. Let me be very specific. Keith will take this feedback and make the changes. Todd and I will work on the other end to make sure that we're building in the things we need to build in. I would like to give recognition to the students who put this policy together. Keith, you mentioned, I believe, did you say you, because the students came up with their own policy because we told them to, and I believe Keith said he used a substantial amount of that.
Probably 2/3 of it.
Which students, if you're listening, hopefully you are, that's fantastic. And I will be bringing this to the students after Keith has made these changes. I'll let them see it before we bring it to the meeting on the 21st. So that they can see what we talked about and see if they have any feedback as well. And then my plan is that we'll bring it back on the 21st for a vote. If any of you are feeling uncomfortable about this or feeling like we need more time, please let me know. We don't have more time, but I'll do my best to make you feel good about it. But please come to me with any concerns you have, and let's see if we can work them out before. I think we've gotten most of it taken care of, but we do want to move forward with this, and we do need to get this passed on the 21st. And then for any students who are interested, our plan is tentatively that we will have the applications open on March 22nd. March 22nd? March 22nd. And then this says April 1st, but this year it will be May 1st that they are due. But it will typically be April 1st because that will give us more breathing room, but this year it will be May 1st. Then we will hold interviews. If all of you will please look at your schedules. A couple of you got back to me, but look at your schedules for the second week. Todd, are you okay with us reviewing applications the first week in May? Then the second week in May, we'll probably have one shot at interviews, so we'll just have one block of time. So if you guys have anything, please email me with anything that doesn't work for you, and then let's get that scheduled for board members to be there for the interview process.
Like the week of the 8th?
The week of the 8th. Because
So
we start with graduations and stuff the following week, I think, and it gets
Gina,
really
a question I had on that was, does the entire board want to do those interviews, or does the board want to select a panel of 3 or 4 to, preferably 3, because then you don't have to call it a formal meeting because you're not making any decisions, other than just, well, actually you would be making decisions about who you move forward. But you could choose, as opposed to the whole board, a representative group.
That's a good question. What do you guys think as a board? Would 3 of us be sufficient?
Yeah. I'm sure all 7 of us will be looking at the applications, right? And then
That's true. We could just all have access to the applications, and then 3 of us could do the interviews.
We can get them scanned and get them out to you. When I say we, I mean Bonnie.
Let me be clear.
Thanks, Bonnie. I think that's something sorry, say that again, Bonnie? Oh. I think that's something, again, we can, so let's take that into consideration. I'm fine with that. Once we get a little bit closer, then we can let you guys know. But if you'll still give me your availability if you are interested in interviewing if you're interested in being involved in the interview process. If you're not interested, then don't reply, and I'll just take that as you're okay if we choose the student rep.
Are you asking for just any times during that week that you're available?
Yeah, give me a block of time. Give me about.
Okay.
True. Give me about 3 hours. Is that enough?
So I'm going to volunteer Bonnie again. Maybe on Monday, Bonnie, could you send out like a doodle poll or something like that to board, and we could do it that way?
Okay. Thank you, Bonnie.
Also, and I'm going to volunteer Todd to be on that committee with you to help make those decisions.
Oh, Todd's yes.
Okay.
He's stuck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
Are we good on that? Okay. Thank you, everybody, for that good feedback. Real quickly, we need to reconvene at 12:45, so we have 16 minutes for the rest of our lunchtime to do whatever we need to do. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this study session.
I move that we adjourn this study session.
Thank you. Okay, we're adjourned.
Good job.